mic is active now.
Dee Dee, you can hear everything you're saying. Hey all, so we thought we would do something a little different because we Dee was having a bit of a Swifty was trying to join in on the on the stream and get in the way, so now he's sitting on the table. Anyway, so we wanted to do a little, every so often, do a live discussion, or probably Dee Dee's going to be the one that's going to be speaking mostly about this issue because she's the one with the biology background and the Masters in Health Science and all of that.
No, I won't.
I think you will be. And so we wanted to, I might just get you to, we might just do some audio levels here and just see if that's working out okay. So yes, that seems like it's okay. So we were going to discuss a few topics today, or at least Dee Dee's going to discuss them and I'm going to join in. And let's see, what were the different ones we were going to do? There was the first one we were going to do is space and possibility of going to Mars. That's something that's come up recently.
We have No Man's Sky on, but that's not actually going to be.
Yeah, we're going to flick to some different articles, and Dee Dee's going to talk about them. And then there's the IPCC recent report on the climate crisis. That's a lot of fun. Some more things about COVID that Dee Dee found something very interesting about scientists thinking they can eradicate COVID. And then we were going to do something about trans kids, a recent article on trans kids, and then maybe Stonehenge and something about bad fat and the environmental impact of bottled water. So those are a few of the things we were going to talk about. Of course, we may end up not doing all of them because we may end up sort of yapping a lot about the first two or three, and so, but that's some of the topics we were going to talk about. So anyway, Dee Dee, did you want to, and hello to everybody who's joined the stream. That's always great to see people and see familiar faces. So anyway, Dee Dee, did you want to talk about that article that we saw recently, and it was in phys.org, and it was titled Want to Pretend...
Phys.org for physics.
Sorry? Phys, yeah. I just wanted to spell it out though.
Yeah. Want
to pretend to live on Mars for a whole year? Apply now. That's the article. And Swifty's getting very determined here.
Yeah.
So basically, did you want to start off, Dee Dee? And
yeah. Okay. So your first thing is about. Shall I read or?
Yeah, you can read. Sure.
Want to find your inner Matt Damon and spend a year pretending you're isolated on Mars? NASA has a job for you. To prepare for eventually sending astronauts to Mars, NASA began taking applications Friday for 4 people to live for a year on Mars Dune Alpha. That's a 1,700 square foot Martian habitat created by 3D printer and inside a building at Johnson Space Center in Houston. The paid volunteers will work for a simulated Martian exploration mission complete with spacewalks, limited communication back home, restricted food and resources, and equipment failure. NASA's planning 3 of these experiments, with the first one starting in fall next year. Food will all be ready to eat space food. At the moment, there will be no windows planned. Some plants will be grown, but not potatoes like in the movie The Martian. Damon played stranded astronaut Mark Watley, who survived on spuds. We want to understand how humans perform in them, said lead scientist Grace Douglas. We're looking at Mars realistic situations. Before I go on, I'll just sort of say this is actually really essential, because probably the key thing for any kind of Mars expedition. Can you keep that?
Yeah, I just wanted to check and see if the levels are okay.
Probably the key element for a Mars expedition, which is going to take like virtually a year to get there and a year to get back, is going to be how compatible, how did the people psychologically deal with each other and with this trip, which is just going to go on and on and on.
Yeah.
For a year.
Yeah.
And obviously, if somebody goes a little crazy, halfway there, they're not going to have any way of dealing with it.
No. You can't put them in the little...
anesthetize the person for the next year and a half?
Yeah.
Or 2 years?
Or put them in the little space chute and shoot them out to space.
Yeah. Well, I actually was at one point thinking of writing a sci-fi book, a sci-fi story about that, about people who just didn't cope at all.
Right.
Where one person there developed some irritating habits and couldn't properly give the privacy, the sense of privacy to the other people. And I know this by personal experience.
Yeah.
Because when I was sailing around the world, we were on a research ship, and we would often be at sea for a month or more at a time.
Right.
And it was a reasonably big ship. There were generally around 10, 12 people on it. But there was one fellow who got on in Marseille who could not give people their privacy. And because it's a ship and people's cabins were small and so on, they often ended up changing their clothes in the hallway. And people ended up having sex with one another on deck and things like that.
Right.
And sometimes somebody ended up with diarrhea and was going off the side of the ship, and these sort of things. Like, these are realities.
Sure. Yeah.
And you learn very quickly to just put down a mental blinker where you don't notice.
Yeah.
You'll have because it was often hot inside the ship, and we were in the tropics a lot, people ended up sleeping on deck. And there were a few couples, and they maybe sleeping together and maybe not sleeping but together on deck. And yet the other people still had to deal with sails and speed tests, which involved putting a wad of paper in at the front of the ship and counting how many seconds it took to get to the back of the ship, or doing star sights or something like that. And all of these things, required basically that you be able to put mental blinkers on, so you're just not paying attention to the people who are having sex there on the deck as you walk past them to do your speed test.
Sure.
And that level of ability to give people their privacy, even though it's only mental privacy, is essential. And we were able to do that. I mean, almost everybody on the ship was able to do that almost all the time. But there was one guy we picked up on Marseille who couldn't, and he would sit there and stare at people.
Jeez.
And it drove people crazy.
Yeah.
Very shortly, everybody was extremely irate. and we ended up pulling in Italy and putting him off the ship.
Yeah. Did he know what? Did he understand what the problem was? Did anybody?
Yes.
Oh,
yes, people
he
talked
did.
to him about
And
it,
yet he
and
didn't.
he couldn't deal with it.
He could. Hang on. He could. When you say he couldn't deal with it, do you mean he didn't
just
want to?
kept doing that kind of behavior.
Right. He couldn't stop.
Paying obvious attention
Right.
to people, changing, doing other things.
Right.
Effectively private things, but in public.
Right. Yeah. Sure. Sure. And so he just couldn't.
And so he, I think people would have thrown him overboard.
Yeah.
If it got to a disgustingly tense situation.
Yeah. Sure.
And we made an unscheduled stop in Italy.
Yeah.
And put him off the ship.
Right. How long was he on the ship for?
About 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, okay. So wasn't even like...
It wasn't long.
Yes, it wouldn't be like being on a year on a spaceship.
No. And if you had somebody who had some kind of an irritating... the story I was doing, the sci-fi story, was somebody like that, and they end up killing him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because there's nothing they can do.
Right,
they can't put him off the ship.
Yeah.
I
was reading... Remember how I told you that thing I heard about... Inuits who, if somebody became incredibly problematic, like really problematic, they'd push them off an iceberg. I mean, I shouldn't laugh at this because I actually think that's really awful.
Yeah, it's a terrible thing. But I mean, honestly...
They wouldn't rescue them, obviously. They push them off. And that's what I heard. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if anybody's heard of that one before. But
this situation on the ship was real. And this was people who had gone across the Atlantic, had gone 2/3 of the way around the world, and never had any problem.
Right.
In that sort of sense.
Yeah.
We had other kinds of problems, but not those problems.
Yeah.
So these kind of psychological things are very real, and that's what they're looking at here.
Yeah. That's
they want
right.
to see how people cope with a really monotonous diet. Seeing the same people all the time. And what do you need to look at psychologically?
I think they'd be able to tell in those special administrative measures that they've got all over American prisons how people are when they're really isolated. Although
but these aren't people who are really isolated. These are people who are having to spend time around other human beings
and
can't get away.
And no windows and not being able to see. I mean... Yeah, I mean, they'd have some idea because of all the solitary confinement that's been in U.S. prisons, but this is sort of an additional thing where you can't even walk around. Like, if anybody in special administrative measures or just solitary confinement gets to do an hour... an hour of walking a day, but they can't even get outside. And that's the other thing too, where their bone mass would probably deteriorate as well. And then they also get the radiation causes cancer on the way. So I don't know how they're going to avoid that as well. But
they probably try and do some sort of shielding. But those are technical problems.
Sure.
This NASA experiment is about psychological issues.
Yeah.
It would try to identify, like, if they found somebody, they would see what kind of problems develop.
Yeah.
And try and work out what kind of people to exclude.
Yeah.
And what kind of people maybe to include.
Yeah.
And I know...
Dee, did you want to put on that No Man's Sky so people don't have to just look
don't have to look at...
screen.
Sure. Okay, here we go.
Hurtling
through space.
Yeah.
It's appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
just want to check and make sure the sound's
switch
off.
and go to a slightly different...
Have we got the sound off in that?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, on that video.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, the other issue is, or the other comparison is the Biosphere 2.
Yeah.
Now, the Biosphere 2 is relatively huge compared to what they're talking about here.
Yeah.
Or a spaceship.
You were sort of involved in that, weren't you, Didi?
I wasn't involved with that. I was involved with the group who ended up doing the Biosphere 2.
Yeah, that's right.
And I was involved with them before they were getting into those kind of projects. And I left the group to a large extent because they started getting these grandiose ideas.
Yeah.
And when I was involved, a lot of the work that they were doing was very simple, environmentally sound technologies that could be adapted by very poor people.
Right.
Using simple means.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really worthwhile type of thing to do, to be involved with.
Yeah.
And then they got involved with somebody who had a whole lot of money and started getting these huge ideas. And of course, Biosphere 2 was one of the hugest ideas.
Yeah.
It's 3 acres. It's a 3-acre greenhouse that was totally enclosed. 8 people went in there for 2 years.
Yeah.
And had major psychological problems. And they could talk to people on the outside, and they could see people. It was a glass house, basically.
Yeah.
So
is
had
it as big as that 1,700 square foot Martian habitat thing they've got here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston? Is it bigger than that?
Biosphere 2
Yeah.
is 3
Massive.
acres.
Oh, 3 acres. Okay. Yeah, that's
it's
a lot.
huge. I mean,
Yeah.
you could literally go very far away from people.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
You could like hide out.
So
in-
this 1,700 square foot, that'd
It's
be
tiny.
like okay. How big? How would that be? Like a quarter of an acre, or it'd be like
no, it wouldn't even be anywhere near that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it'd be like a 20th of the biosphere size that people had. Biosphere 2.
Not even a 20th.
Oh, really?
It'd be tiny.
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 Oh, okay. Jesus, that's kind of small, isn't it?
Yeah. Our house is 144 square meters. And that's 1,700
yeah.
square feet.
So these volunteers that they're looking for, are they looking for people with some kind of science background or
Well, I'll go
something?
back to that story.
Oh, okay. Because or are they just everyday people?
No, they're not
looking
just
for?
everyday people.
Okay.
So the application process opened Friday, and they're not seeking just anybody. The requirements are strict, including a master's degree in science, engineering, or math, or pilot experience.
Right.
Only American citizens or permanent U.S. residents are eligible. People can apply. This is actually a current article. Applicants have to be between 30 and 55, in good physical health with no dietary issues, and not prone to motion sickness. That shows NASA is looking for people who are close to astronauts, close to what would be required to be an astronaut. Basically, if you could make the grade as an astronaut, you'd have to fulfill those kind of criteria, said former Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield. And he said that's a good thing because it's a better experiment if the participants are more similar to the people who will really go to Mars.
Yeah.
Past Russian efforts at a pretend Mars mission called Mars 500 didn't end well, partly because the people were too much like everyday people, he said.
Yeah, right. Hey, Didi, can I point out some comments in the?
Can I just finish a little bit more?
Sure, no worries.
For the right person, this could be great, said Hadfield, who spent 5 months in orbit at the International Space Station, where he played guitar and sang a cover of David Bowie's Space Oddity. Just think how much you're going to be able to catch up on Netflix.
What's that there? What is that? I see. Oh, this is the 3D construction thing, is it?
Yeah.
Right. Jesus, is that it? Is that it? What they're going to live in?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no, they don't even. Shouldn't they do the?
I think they're going to have something on top of it.
Shouldn't they do the spaceship thing first and see if people don't kill one another in the spaceship before they
much
get to
smaller?
Wouldn't that be more important to see if they could make it there?
Well, I guess they check on this first. I don't know. I mean, basically, you're probably going to be over a year.
Hey, Chris.
You're going to be 2 years
Dan.
with these people just to get to Mars and back.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, 2
Plus,
years. Is it 2 years there or
no,
back?
1 year there,
Oh,
roughly.
yeah, yeah.
Whatever time you spend on
Yeah.
Mars, and a year to get back.
Yeah, yeah. But I would do the spaceship thing first. If you can deal with a spaceship, then you could probably deal with that.
Yeah, because there are probably going to be more interesting things to do
Yeah,
on Mars
exactly. Yeah.
than in a spaceship.
Yeah, yeah.
Because the spaceship,
Maybe
aside
they
from
put them
checking
on
it,
heavy tranks.
checking it and making sure it works. So,
I'd need a heavy trank.
so Hadfield said,
tranquilizer.
for the right person, this could be great. Where he played guitar. Just think how much you're going to be able to catch up on Netflix. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
Is there 2 years worth of Netflix that you'd want to watch?
Yeah, maybe there's a whole bunch of
I
podcasts.
find it really difficult
I'd load
to
up on
find any new
podcasts.
stuff on Netflix I want to watch.
Shall we just look at the so Herb
This thing.
says so Chris says interesting dynamics. Herb says sounds like your experience has already identified an important factor. Societal breakdowns are not, and Dan says societal breakdowns are not in equations of survival on planet Earth. Let's see.
Yes.
Can you read that, Didi?
Hang on, let me change my
Shall
glasses.
hang on, let me
You
expand.
can read
Let
it.
me expand that a bit. Look, there you go. How's
Okay.
that?
Yeah, that's better.
So, and Herb says submariners must also have the problem you described. So how do they psychologically profile such problem individuals in space? I wonder. Oh, in advance. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I wonder. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, certainly submariners are actually a very specific group, and they do manage to weed out people who can't deal with the submariner environment.
Yeah.
Where they'll be, but I mean, they're talking for a submariner, they may be a couple of months, maybe max, in isolation with a whole bunch of people. But you're also doing things
Yeah.
on a submarine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're checking things, you're looking at things, you're monitoring things.
You'd have access to the internet. Would you have access to the there's
I'm
nuclear
not sure
submarines?
how much you have access to the internet. Basically, you probably have periodic access,
Yeah.
but because of the requirements often that you go unnoticed,
Yeah.
that you be running silent,
Yeah. Yeah.
I would imagine there's periods where you don't have access.
Yeah. Did you ever see that movie Dust Boat? That was I
No.
remember that being a good movie, that German movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, so anyhow, so that's what that looks like.
But
that looks kind of like I don't know.
I'm sure they're going to put a roof on it and create little laboratories
Jesus
in there
Christ.
and stuff.
How long do they have to be there? A year?
A year.
Okay.
Okay.
I wonder if they get any money for that.
Yes,
Oh, do they?
they get paid.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you only have to look at how people get on although these are probably scientists kind of people.
Yeah.
You only have to look at how people get on in Big Brother houses.
Yeah. See, the paid volunteers will work.
Oh, okay. That's
And
very
and they're given jobs in this case. They're going to have spacewalks. They will have some communication, but partly it's restricted food and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, when they say that the food is ready to eat space food at the moment where there are no windows planned, ready to eat space food, I'm assuming it's probably what? Dehydrated stuff.
Smush.
Yeah, hopefully they don't give them meat and
They
stuff
probably
like
do.
that.
Almost certainly.
Oh, that'll be
Eggs and
good.
things like that.
Anyway, so is there anything else you wanted to say about this?
No, I just that I find, I mean, aside from the fact that, like, we're unlikely ever to go to Mars and colonize it.
Yeah.
Somebody might end up going up there, but this idea that you'll get to Mars and have a colony there and all that, I think we don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And I would love it if I mean, I love space.
Mm.
I would love to, be able to see humanity get into space. That would be so lovely.
If they weren't dysfunctional.
Well, if they weren't such disgusting biocidal,
Yeah.
people. There's an interesting little thing about the biosphere if anybody wants to look at it on YouTube.
Dan says NASA gave us Tang and Velcro. The Velcro is pretty good. Not sure about the Tang.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Excuse me, little one. There's a God, a TED Talk by Jane Poynter, that's Poynter, about life in Biosphere 2.
Oh,
and that's kind of interesting.
I should have a
She
look
was
at
one
that.
of the people who was in there
I should have a look at
for
that.
2 years.
Oh, wow.
And yeah,
How did she cope?
well, she said people went a bit crazy.
Yeah, what kind of things did they demonstrate when they were going crazy? Like,
Oh, hostility, paranoia, pairing. There were 4 men and 4 women.
right.
And some of them formed little groups and excluded other people, and there was
God.
all tension. All
So
the
all the
stuff
weird
humans do.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, and this is almost inevitable.
Why would you do, when you've got to get on with people, why would you get into exclusionary behavior? That's really...
Bion, I forgot his first name, Bion, Bion, wrote a book called Experiences in Groups, where
Right,
he talks about group dynamics and the psychology of groups.
right.
And it's very interesting, that book.
What would he have said about that as
Well,
to why?
he says that one of the things when people aren't clearly on a task,
Uh-huh.
he said there are 2 kinds of groups. There's task group, where people have a specific task where they come together to do something. And there's group animal, which
Yeah.
is, where people are just functioning and they do this various things. And he identified patterns, like one of the patterns was pairing,
Yeah.
where people pair off and then kind of do an exclusion inclusion.
Uh-huh.
Another was, kill the leader.
Right.
And yeah, it's really an interesting book, and if people are interested in group dynamics, it's well worth a read.
What's it called again?
Experience in Groups.
Experience in Groups, right.
Yeah.
I wonder why though, like why do humans insist on
Oh.
doing that kind of stuff? You know what I mean? Like
It's just natural psychology stuff, where if they don't have anything
that
to
doesn't
do,
sound like very good survival techniques by excluding different individuals. And do you know what I mean?
it comes into like mating things, and then I don't know. It's the way tensions develop.
Right.
Fight flight is another one where
Like
people
I can
tend to
see
get
that,
into.
you can see these sort of things happening in groups all the time and in movements
Yeah,
and stuff like that. But it's like, I just wonder if you had, if you were had to survive,
yeah.
then you would hopefully try and...
Well, this is where he said the opposite of these things, like fight, flight, or following or kill the leader, or
Excuse me.
pairing, or this kind of thing,
Yeah,
is task group, which is if you're trying to survive,
yeah,
you all get together and are on task,
uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
you're trying to do something. He talks about it and he says the thing with the task group is it exists to do the task,
Yeah,
and it ends when the task is finished.
yeah,
So if you need to, you find the door is blocked, you get together and you might work out things with people. How do we get this door open?
yeah,
And people work together and manage to get the door open so that they can get out.
yeah,
And then the group ends.
yeah,
And you can have a series of tasks. You
Yeah.
can also have big tasks.
uh-huh.
I mean, the problem is when people fall away from the task.
Yeah,
And this is where like a revolutionary cadre
yeah,
can be on that task. But it also, you get things like, the things with feminism where people start getting into infighting and exclusion and
right,
and all that kind of stuff.
yeah,
And there's been a lot written about that kind of thing.
yes.
And it's just a natural psychological tendency.
So have they got ways of like, you know,
Well,
the people,
part of his thing was
the
how to
people who organise this, you know, this Mars volunteer thing?
Yeah.
Are they going to, have they sort of made sure that those people have tasks, you know, consecutive tasks, so they don't end up?
Well, they have tasks. Whether they'll be able to form task groups or whether they devolve into that, I mean, it's like
Jesus.
on the ship when we were sailing around. I
Yeah.
told you about a number of people. They developed these patterns of negativity after we left Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where it actually became kind of dangerous. And I and the other main navigator that was on the ship at the time left in Australia because we were worried. The next trip was supposed to have been around Cape Horn,
Uh-huh.
and we didn't want to be on the ship if it was going there with the
Right.
people who were as negative as that.
Right.
We thought there was a good chance somebody would die.
Oh, really?
And
On
in
that
fact,
ship?
they didn't do that. They ended up sinking the ship twice
Right.
and having to fix it up and
What was
refloat
going
it.
on there that they... That
Just patterns of negativity, people not doing the things that they needed to do, people saying that they'd done something and not having done it, you
Right.
know. And you get those kind of patterns of negativity in groups sometimes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so
And
weird.
and if when you do, it can become dangerous.
So are they going to have any sort of psychologist in that group that
I'm
can...
sure, probably not in the group, but I'm sure they're going to be watching.
Oh, sure they're going to be watching, but shouldn't they have somebody like that
Well,
to... Anyway, I
it-
suppose
it
they
was-
can rescue
a
people if...
psychologist is just a person too,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, well, anyway, that's...
so that's kind of
excuse me,
interesting.
how are they going to deal with the, you know, the radiation on the way up and stuff? Because, I mean, that's cancer-causing
Yeah,
levels of radiation.
I would imagine they're going to try really good shielding on the ship and stuff. Whether they'll good enough, I don't know. But Silent Running sounds like a submarine movie. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to mention who it is, Dee Dee, because if we don't get the...
Chris Garrett says Silent Running sounds like a submarine movie. I was talking about on submarines, sometimes they do want to do silent running so that people don't know where the sub is. But it takes place in space where the crew gets the order to destroy the last saved forests that they are preserving.
Right.
What? I don't know. Oh, is that a movie?
Yeah,
Oh, I
think so.
see.
yeah.
Then mutiny pursues. Or results. I would imagine, if you had a forest on board or something, then I would imagine you wouldn't want to destroy it.
And then Dan says, before automation, assembly lines offered careers, pushing the green button with retirement benefits. And he said,
Yeah.
I heard these people thank their luck living through this experience working on assembly lines.
Yeah, I'm not sure how assembly lines relate to.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose you're trapped, and not trapped really, but yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, they are giving them a whole bunch of tasks, but what I'm saying is tasks aren't enough unless you actually have formed kind of a task group,
Yeah. Right.
and that's the group necessary to actually accomplish the task.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there anything else in that article that?
No, that's pretty much done.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
I mean, what's his name says Hadfield. Oops, no. Hadfield says, attitude is the key. He's written a book called The Apollo Murders, which is a thriller. America against the Russians, and you have some saboteur aboard the Apollo spaceship, which is a three-person thing. But I mean, his attitude was, think how much you're going to be able to catch on Netflix. If they have a musical instrument, you could just go on knowing knowing nothing and come out a concert musician if you want.
Yeah.
Well, that might be true, but that's not how people behave.
No.
And no, I don't think you'd have 2 years worth of Netflix that anybody would want to watch.
No. Anyway, I don't think we're going to go and talk now about the IPCC.
IPCC. We're now going to go to the depressive stuff.
Yeah, and this just a reminder that if people aren't aware that this is a very conservative group, and they've always very, very conservative. So you know, I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to what they say. It's always much worse than what they say.
Yeah.
And this is why we probably won't be making it to Mars, because we're probably just not, you know, considering what's going on this planet. And you know, and I've often said this: I don't really want humans to take their dysfunction out into space. And it seems like we get becoming more and more insane and dysfunctional as a species.
Yeah.
As time goes by. So
no good news here. If people don't know, the International Panel of Climate Change just published their latest report a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
The UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's first major assessment since 2014, released Monday, that's 2 days ago, shows unequivocally that global warming is unfolding more quickly than feared, and that humanity is almost entirely to blame. Here's a rundown of some of the key findings. Goodbye 1.5. Remember, a couple of years ago, they said we must stop the increase in temperature by 1.5, or we're kind of fucked. And now they're saying goodbye 1.5. It's overshoot. Earth's average surface temperature is projected to hit 1.5 or 1.6 above pre-industrial levels around 2030. That's in 8 years. In all 5 of the greenhouse gas emissions scenarios, they always do, you know, a really great scenario and the worst scenario and what's in between, depending on how people behave, ranging from highly optimistic to reckless, considered by the report. And these considerations are always pretty conservative, because you've got to get a bunch of scientists who will agree to everything, and they are influenced by various institutions, and then you have to have governments sign off on it. And so it gets watered down and watered down. That's a full decade earlier than the IPCC predicted 3 years ago.
It's what, sorry?
It's a full decade. We're hitting 1.5 or 1.6 in 8 years. That's a decade earlier than they predicted 3 years ago.
Right.
So things are going south much faster than they thought.
People don't seem to realize, a lot of people don't seem to realize that it's exponentially increasing. Like, they think it's just going to kind of go in this sort of
well, there's feedback loops.
Yeah.
I mean, scientists talk about synergetic systems, and a synergetic system is like a bicycle wheel. And a bicycle wheel shows a level of strength that is way out of proportion to the strength of spokes. Spokes are just tiny bits of wire. And yet it can hold up, you know, a 200 kilo person.
Yeah.
You know. And the thing with a bicycle wheel is you can cut off a spoke here, and you can cut off a spoke there. And the loads tend to adjust, and the wheel keeps turning. Mm-hmm. And that works until you cut off one too many spokes, and then the wheel deforms. Yeah. And at that point, it's almost impossible to get it back looking like a circle.
Yes.
And that's how synergetic systems work. They tend to, you know, adjust and adjust until they can't adjust.
Yeah.
Anyway, By mid-century, the 1.5 threshold will have been breached across the board by a tenth of a degree among the most ambitious pathways. And the most ambitious pathway is if everybody on Earth decides tomorrow that we're going to do everything we can.
Yeah.
You know, excuse me, I get excited about this. That if everybody on Earth decides to do everything we can and put all our resources into trying to make this sustainable, that's the most ambitious.
Yeah.
And they say with the most ambitious, it will have been breached across the board by at least a tenth of a degree.
Yeah.
And by nearly a full degree in the opposite extreme. That's by 2050.
Yeah,
it
honestly
means that we'll be at 2.5.
2.5 by mid-century.
Yeah.
I actually think that that's probably being. I think it's going to be more than that.
Yeah, I think it may be.
Yeah, I think so.
Things aren't going well, and it doesn't look good. And
no, it's not taking into account things that are happening, like the melting East Siberian Arctic shelf.
Yeah.
If the methane comes up from there, if the methane
situation
comes up
of
from
the Amazon.
ocean, the Amazon rainforest is probably the most.
Yeah.
Because that's actually now emitting CO2 instead of absorbing it.
Yeah.
And that's only going to. That's actually going to escalate.
The Amazon basin is, yeah.
It's going to escalate, and the oceans, of course, are.
There's a limit. I'll read the rest of this because it's kind of interesting. Yeah. There is a silver. I mean, this is where I kind of think it's like I roll my eyes. There is a silver lining in the most ambitious. If we do everything right tomorrow, scenario. Global temperatures after overshooting the 1.5 target will fall back to 1.4 by 2100.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Good luck with that.
Be here by 2100.
No, we won't. And there's no. This is what often amazes me too. There's no talk about how agriculture is already failing.
Yeah.
I mean
that's the next article.
Yeah, that's the.
But no, they don't talk about that.
No.
In that report, there's very little there.
Yeah, I mean, they keep talking about how oceans are going to rise.
Yeah.
As if that's the worst thing that can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Starving to death probably is a major one, or cooking to death, as in wet bulbs and all
I mean,
that.
honestly, if you're going to look at what the impacts of climate change are going to be in the short term, even. The major impacts are going to be a complete disruption of the food systems.
Yeah.
People look at things like the fires everywhere that are going on in Turkey and Greece and, Sardinia and California and, all over the place.
Yeah.
Siberia, like all over the world, forests are on fire in the northern hemisphere. And that's because it's gotten so dry that they're
but
just.
Your daughter hasn't. She's actually got some fires approaching where she lives.
She had to evacuate.
Dee Dee's daughter lives in
my
California.
daughter lives in Northern California,
and she had to evacuate.
Yeah.
Which is. Really
I don't
awful.
think she's lost her house happily.
No.
But yeah, I mean the thing that they keep not saying is that this is going to cause massive starvation.
Yeah.
This is going to completely disrupt food systems.
Yeah.
I'll quickly go through this because and then so I can get to the next thing.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Besides, I don't want to spend too much time on rehashing things people kind of know about. But by 1960, forests, soils, and oceans have absorbed 56% of all CO2 humanity has chucked in the atmosphere. Even as those emissions have increased by half, without nature's help, Earth would be in a much hotter and less hospitable place. An amazing amount of CO2 has been absorbed by the ocean. But there's limits to that. A lot more has been absorbed by the ocean than they ever thought. These allies in our fight against global heating, known in this role as carbon sinks, are showing signs of becoming saturated. The percentage of human-induced carbon they soak up is likely to decline as the century unfolds. yes, climate change is to blame, sea rising higher more quickly, la la la. They always underestimate this sea level rise too. But sea level rise, I mean, that's going to take, a century or more, to have really pretty significant. They talk about it'll continue rising to nearly 2 meters by 2300, twice the amount predicted.
2300.
Yeah, twice the amount predicted by the IPCC in 2019. But, because of the uncertainty over ice sheets, cannot rule out a total rise of 2 meters by 2100. And then they go on and say it could actually be 3 million years ago, when atmosphere's CO2 concentrations matched today's level and temperatures were 2.5 to 4 degrees higher, sea levels were 25 meters higher.
Oh, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
For all that ice to melt, it takes a bit of time.
Yeah, sure.
Long before that, I mean, we're already seeing, the destruction of arable land. I mean, in France, like huge losses of agricultural losses have happened. And this is due to not enough rain, too much rain, fires, aridity, all sorts of things are really screwing up. Like, I think it was last year, maybe it was the year before, like a huge amount of the fruit crop in southern France failed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have the fires in Greece and Turkey and stuff. Well, those are major food areas. People aren't thinking that in a global system where we get food from everywhere, to have these major food producing areas die. And talking about the Amazon, there was an article, God, it came out 50 years ago now.
What's that?
50 years ago they were talking about the Amazon and the fact that the Amazon is growing on lateric soil. And that's a kind of soil that it will turn into cement if you lose all the kind of topsoil and that kind of stuff. And in the Amazon, in a rainforest like that, nearly all of the nutrients and the carbon are in the leaf litter and in the topsoil areas.
Yeah.
And that can be, several feet thick. But when you clear areas of the Amazon, what happens is all of that gets washed away. If they don't actually burn it, which they do, what's left gets washed away and eroded really quickly. And then that ground hardens and turns into cement. That's what happens. It turns into what they call laterite.
Yeah.
And it turns into a rock form.
Right.
So you're talking about not only, losing the forest, but creating a situation where things will have difficulty growing.
Yeah.
And that's a huge area of the earth.
Yeah.
But the same is happening along the areas of the Mekong and some of the tropical forests in Thailand and Laos and places like that.
Right.
They talk a little about methane and stuff here.
Didi, before we talk about methane,
Yeah.
can I just share that thing that I've talked about many, many times, about what the animal agriculture and the recent, and
Sure.
the study 2 years ago, the study published in the journal Science created a huge data set based on almost 40,000 farms in 119 countries and covering 40 food products that represent 90% of all that is eaten. It assessed the full impact of these foods from farm to fork on land use, climate change emissions, freshwater use, and water pollution, that's eutrophication, and air pollution, that's acidification. And the conclusion was, quote, a vegan diet is probably the single biggest way to reduce your impact on planet Earth, not just greenhouse gases, but global acidification, eutrophication, land use and water use, end quote, said Dr. Joseph Poore at the University of Oxford, UK, who led the research. He said, quote, "It is far bigger than cutting down on your flights or buying an electric car," end quote, he said, as these only cut greenhouse gas emissions. And also, another important thing to remember about this study is the new research shows that without meat and dairy consumption, global farmland use could be reduced by more than 75%.
75%?
Yeah, an area equivalent to the US, China, European Union and Australia combined, and still feed the world. Loss of wild areas to agriculture, animal agriculture, is the leading cause of the current mass extinction of life. And I'll just read that again, because this is wildlife. The new research shows that without meat and dairy consumption, global farmland use could be reduced by more than 75%, an area equivalent to the US, China, European Union and Australia combined, and still feed the world. Loss of wild areas to animal agriculture is the leading cause of the current mass extinction of wildlife. So that's basically, it's a leading cause of the sixth mass extinction.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
that's an important
that's an
element.
important
I mean,
thing.
if we were going to do something about that, it is right now the biggest single thing an individual could do.
Yes. And yet, Extinction Rebellion pretends that being vegan isn't important and just poo-poos it. And I was watching a live stream just recently where everybody's going, "Oh, capitalism and this and that," and you bring up
and
veganism.
Of course, all those things are important too.
Yeah, they're all. Capitalism needs to end, but I mean, this is something of course, and I talk about that too. We need to be anti-capitalist, but this is something we need to do right. We can do right now. Doesn't need permission from any corporation, our parents or anything.
Yeah.
We can be vegan right now, and we could seriously address all those points that are made in that study. We can also, if you have a look at seaspiracy.org, that's the latest documentary about what we're doing to the oceans. That's something you should watch and then think about going vegan. Then there's Cowspiracy. You should watch that. That's basically propping up what's said in this report, and that was done a few years ago.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like a no-brainer, but apparently people value their taste buds, even though a vegan diet, a diet free of meat, fish, eggs, dairy, etc., is delicious. But I mean, people obviously a lot of people value their taste buds more than our survival and the survival of other species on the planet.
Or what they're habitually
used
to eating.
Pardon?
It can't even be the taste buds, because there's fabulous food.
Exactly, that's what I said.
But it's what you're habituated to eating.
Yeah.
And it's like, what I keep saying is that if people are unwilling to make as simple a change as that, how are they going to deal with huge, major changes?
Yeah.
Like, to really address all of this, we'd have to completely change the way we use energy. And that's not just going to mean industry has to find another, put up bunches of solar. No, that means, we have to stop using freaking cars.
Yeah. And I can't believe
that means
Didi and
we may not be able to live in the way we do.
Yeah.
We may have to live closer together so that we are close enough to work and that kind of thing, that we can walk and instead of using transport, because people forget that any of these technological solutions require masses of energy to create them and maintain them, and they also require masses of resources.
Well, it's truly, like I often say to Didi, it's just astounding that we're still driving around in fossil fuel tons of steel, and there's absolutely, in Tasmania, there's no electric power things at any
Australia's
stations.
has
We're so
a
backward
dismal
here.
record.
And there's no light rail from rural areas. Like, they talk about it, but they never do it. There's nothing. There's no real. You wouldn't even know that this is going on, would you, Didi?
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know that this is.
The one way you'd know is that a lot of people have photovoltaics on their roof in
Oh
Taz.
yes, solar panels. They
Solar
have that.
panels,
Yeah,
which is a great,
yeah, yeah.
great.
But I mean, God, there needs to be so much.
But
Like
that's
there
not
needs
just the
needs to be a
answer.
fundamental
It's an
change,
answer.
and there needs to be the end of capitalism. That would start
Yeah.
it. That would be a major. But
Well, yeah, basically you can't make the kind of changes when they talk about the most optimistic scenario where everybody gets together and does everything necessary. The first thing that's going to have to happen is capitalism is going to have to end,
yeah,
because you can't do that on the basis of somebody making a bucket load of money out of it.
yeah. Well,
They'll
it's
try, but that will screw up every effort to do that.
yeah,
We have to have people get together and say, what kind of a world do we want to live in?
yeah,
How do we get it? And let's just do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And if that means making sacrifices, you make sacrifices.
yeah, yeah.
And you will have to. People will have to pitch in. People will have to give up all kinds of things.
I feel like the only way change is actually going to come is when it gets so dire that people then start panicking and that at that stage, of course. I mean, I feel like it's too late now anyway with all the exponential feedback loops and all of that. But I don't like to. We've got to keep trying, and we might mitigate the worst things, and maybe some other species might survive on the planet if we tried to mitigate some of the awful stuff.
Yeah.
But people can't even stop eating animal products, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
They can't even stop doing
Even though
that.
it's really clear
Even
that
though
it
it's
would
really
make
clear.
a huge difference.
Often I cannot believe people can see that even just the amount of land, and that we could still feed the world and have all that land.
They want someone else to make the change for them.
They're sentient
They want
beings.
government to do it. They want industry to do it. Well, no, it's going to have to be people.
Holly, have a good day, and hope everything goes well. Holly's leaving now.
I hope everything goes well with you, Holly.
Yeah.
And particularly with your health.
Yes. We have good thoughts for you, Holly.
Anyway, I think of things like the Russian Revolution or the Cuban Revolution and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who were well off found themselves in much worse situations. A lot of them ran to the United States or whatever and have been whinging about it ever since and trying to make trouble.
Yeah.
But even the people in those countries, had to make massive changes.
Yeah, yeah.
People in Russia had to make huge changes.
Yeah.
And but under the Soviet Union, everybody had a house or some sort of dwelling. Yeah.
Yeah.
People had health care. Yeah. Of course, they were trying to build an industrial economy at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
But people, worked at it. People worked at it in China and sacrificed a lot and changed a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how much change people have gone through in China.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
To do any of these changes takes a huge amount of willingness to change.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the next bit.
Yeah.
This is another little bit from Nature. Earth is warmer than it's been for 125,000 years.
What's that?
Earth is warmer. This is the Nature article.
Oh, yeah.
Earth is warmer than it's been in 125,000 years. This is not a little bit of,
can
this,
you like make
it
that
doesn't,
a bit?
I can't without
kind
of messing up everything here.
That's all right.
I won't go too much into that article. I'll go to the next one, which is the one about drought. This is one. Historic drought threatens California farms, supplying much of the U.S. food. And this is what I was talking about before. Cows graze on what's left of the grass. I don't know. You don't have the picture there.
Hang on, I'm looking for the.
Yeah. This was
which one are
this
we
was a
looking
fertile
at?
plain. You just had it there.
Oh, this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a fertile plain.
Oh, okay.
And
Oh my, that picture is. Oh,
California.
Wow. Oh yeah.
In the Central Valley.
Yeah. God, I feel sorry
Residents have watched with dismay as verdant fields have turned into brown, dusty plains, leaving shriveled trees, dying plants, and exasperated farmers. Oh, poor exasperated farmers.
Yeah, really.
I think they're probably more than exasperated.
Yeah, really.
I hate this kind of journalism which they
I know.
they kind of, oh yes, and Fred
Seriously.
Jinks here is sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
The search for water has turned into an all-out obsession as the region suffers through a drought that could threaten U.S. food supply. Because, in fact, the Central Valley of California provides a huge amount of the food
Yeah.
in the U.S. The food is one of the major food-producing areas. Much of California and the broader U.S. West, and this has affected the plains and other states, has suffered through years of lighter than usual precipitation and a particularly dry winter. State and local authorities, fearful there may not be enough water for city dwellers or wildlife, have abruptly cut supplies to farms, provoking anger and consternation. Along the roads between major farming operations, billboards have popped up everywhere saying, "Save California's water." They accuse authorities of dumping our water in the ocean. Basically, they're trying to save some of the wildlife. Growers complain the state's Democratic governor is strangling them under a mountain of pointless restrictions, leaving them unable to fulfill their usual role of supplying America's supermarket. Starving the world. He added that he has 2,000 acres of alfalfa going dry. Standing in a dusty...
Wow, that's a lot of alfalfa.
Yeah.
800 hectares.
Well, you know what alfalfa's for. Feeding animals.
Yeah.
Standing in a dusty field near Fresno, he said he worries that the wrong political agenda. We're going to starve ourselves and the rest of the world. I don't think California supplies the world. They did emergency legislation last week to prevent thousands of people, notably farmers, from diverting streams or rivers. Yeah, everybody wants to have. We have that with the what's the name of the big river? I'm having a senior moment.
Where?
In Australia.
Murray-Darling.
The Murray-Darling.
Yeah.
The graziers and stuff all want the water, and it's slowed down to a trickle. And towns that depend on that water further downstream have ended up not having the water.
Yeah.
And they have to truck in water.
That's weird.
And basically, the government has said, no, the farmers can't have all that water.
Yeah.
Some of it is needed for the towns downstream.
Yeah.
People, they have that huge cotton growing area in Queensland.
Yeah.
And it's taking a huge amount of the water away from a lot of the food growing areas further downstream too.
Yeah.
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 And as for a cash crop that is actually incredibly ecologically damaging.
Yeah. It's a shit show. The whole thing.
Farmers found themselves forced to rely on wells dug deep in the ground at costs of several $1,000s. But even they eventually run dry. Yeah, basically, if you don't have rain, the groundwater disappears. And if you keep drilling wells, you'll suck the groundwater away.
Yeah.
And part of the problem is that there isn't the snow that has been in the Sierras that provide ongoing river flows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The situation is terrible, said Lisa Garcia, who relied on well water to irrigate half her 20-acre farm until it dried up.
Yeah.
She can't get somebody to come and do her well because they're busy doing other people's wells because everybody needs new wells. But that's happening in India too.
Yeah.
All around Maharashtra, where the cotton growing has dried up all the wells in the villages and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And whole villages are having to to kind of dissolve
Yeah.
because they don't have any water.
Yeah.
Sitting in a vegetable stand, and that's for really almost throwaway clothing. So much of the clothing is just cheap and nasty
I
shit.
know. Yeah.
It doesn't last.
No.
It ends up in the tip in no time.
I know, it's
And
crazy.
that's just so ridiculous. That's capitalism all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, people would have to stop that. They'd have to say, no, you just can't have lots and lots and lots of clothes.
Yeah.
You'd have to have maybe some good clothes,
Yeah.
and you're going to have to make it last.
Yeah.
We'd have to do things like, are people going to put up with that? They won't
What's
even
that?
put up with changing their diet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
To say, no, you can't have all this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's what really changing things would mean.
Yeah.
Is to say for all of these people who manage to get all this stuff,
Yeah.
You can't. There's a lot of foliage that's already burned. Heat's destroyed. A lot of foliage already burnt, pretty much dried up, crisped up. Fruit not getting to a size, not getting its juiciness and sweetness. It becomes a luxury to have food. Does that sound insane? No, it's been on the cards for decades. Synecologists have been saying that.
Yeah.
The IPCC has been really mealy-mouthed about this. But any good, synecologist, which is what I've been doing, has been saying, the issue is not freaking sea level rise interfering with your real estate. The issue is drought and loss of food.
Yeah.
And this is not going to mean people are necessarily not going to have food. It means that food is going to get progressively more and more expensive because food will still keep being produced.
Yeah.
It's just like the idea that there's going to be an oil crisis means suddenly there won't be oil. That was never the case.
Yeah.
What it means is that oil gets more and more expensive to find and produce, and petrol will get more and more and more expensive, and food is going that way now. I don't know how much people have noticed. I've certainly noticed how you get these huge jumps in food prices.
Yeah.
They used to go up, a few cents.
It doesn't even make any sense, actually, the food prices anymore.
Yeah.
They're up $1 one time, up $2, then back to... I mean, it doesn't even make sense. I'd love to know how they arrive at these food prices.
I think partly it's because they dominate. The big supermarkets and the food industry dominate the distribution system, and they can set prices to a degree, and so what they're working out prices that people will buy the food at.
Yeah.
But at some point, people have to buy food because people don't grow food anymore.
I still can't believe they have animal agriculture in California. I really can't. Like, they have such a water problem there.
Yeah.
And, it takes 1,000 gallons of milk to make 1 gallon... Sorry, 1,000 gallons of water to make 1 gallon of milk. And it takes... animals drink a huge amount of water. And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Just putting aside, I just wish animal agriculture would end because they're sentient.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, part of the thing in this was that the almond industry is just dying.
Yeah.
Because
that's hugely water intensive.
It's very water intensive, and they don't have the water. And if you don't have enough water, if you can't really pump the water into almonds, it'll grow the shells, but there's not nuts in those shells.
Right.
And that becomes just crazy.
You would think that they would switch to something else, wouldn't you?
Well, I think they're going to. They're doing it. Basically, I think the Californian almond industry, which has been huge, is going to die. And I
this
think a
is
lot of their food industry is going to die. And then you've got issues like, the Colorado dam has become so saline
right.
that you can't use that water, you can't drink that water, and
Yeah.
so on. Um, and that's the case in other places, like in WA. The Swan River went from being kind of pristine, and the big dams that they use for the city of Perth,
Yeah.
have gone saline, and you can't use them anymore.
Yeah.
They're far too saline to use for animals.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. I mean, that's all part of that issue.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wasn't going to go on too much more about global
Yeah.
warming. That's negative enough.
Yeah. Sure.
Horrible, horrible news.
Sure. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's some drama that happens in the corporate news to distract from this report, even though this report is very conservative.
Yeah,
And for a
and
conservative report, it's
basically saying that we're likely to have an increase in the next 100 years of up to 2.5 degrees higher. Yeah, which is, I mean, that's their prediction. It's liable to be higher than that. Might be as much as 4. I've seen by more reputable
when?
people. 4 degrees by 2100.
2100. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that becomes completely untenable. I mean, really,
Untenable, yeah.
scientists have been saying 1.5 becomes untenable,
Yeah.
but we're there.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's inevitable.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people don't recognize too, is if everybody decided to change the world right now,
Yeah.
how long would it take to get them organized and start changing things? And how long would it take to actually change things?
Yeah.
And I think it would take, 20, 30 years.
Yeah. Right.
And you have to figure that into the equation.
Really, you think it would take that long?
Yeah. I mean, you know how long it takes to build a coal-fired power plant? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It takes years.
Yeah.
How long it takes to build a dam?
Yeah. Yeah.
They take years to build.
Yeah.
When people are talking about converting everything, how long would it take to convert Tasmania to electric power,
Yeah.
transport?
Yeah.
Now, Tasmania is in a lucky space where most of our electricity comes from hydro already.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to something else.
Yes.
So, the Delta variant and the vaccinated, one expert's take. I'll just quickly go into this. The new highly contagious Delta variant can be picked up and spread. It's caused some confusion. I don't think I will. We kind of covered this yesterday.
What's that?
About
Yeah.
the Delta variant being, yes, people who are fully vaccinated can get the Delta variant. They're breakthrough cases. They don't have that much of a problem. But it's not a good idea for people not to wear masks. And of course, this is where all of this COVID passport, vaccine passport things come in.
Yeah.
And the vaccine passports are really kind of a shithouse idea.
Yeah.
Unlike what Max was saying, he was kind of saying it's, to protect the vaccinated against the unvaccinated. And that's stupid. It's not for that. What it is to basically keep the unvaccinated people out of some areas so that vaccinated people don't have to use all of these masks and all that sort of stuff and have to worry so much about social distancing.
Uh-huh.
It's more that people don't want to have to worry about. They don't want to be locked down. They want to have a special area where they can not be locked down,
Yeah.
where they don't have to wear masks and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you were really being responsible for everybody, you'd be wearing masks
Yeah. Yeah.
and you would be social distancing.
What was that article you spotted about scientists thinking they could eradicate COVID?
Yeah, I'll go to the next
Yeah,
one.
because that's kind of an interesting one.
Before that, I just have another bad article.
Another what article?
Another bad article from
Right.
the University of California. A young, healthy woman suffers brain inflammation after mild COVID-19. She had a mild case. It's mainly treated as a respiratory disease. Patients often experience neurological problems like headaches, anxiety, depression, cognitive issues, which can persist long after other symptoms have resolved. And this isn't long COVID, this is other things. The brain fog and that kind of stuff. This is after the respiratory effects go away. Some research has shown blood vessel damage and inflammation, referred to as vasculitis, in COVID-19 patients' brains and central nervous system. Most cases of CNS vasculitis has been associated with elderly patients with severe COVID-19. But in a report published on July 28th in the Journal of Neurology, a multidisciplinary team of physicians at UC California, San Diego, described the first known case of a young, healthy adult infected by COVID who experienced CNS lymphocytic vasculitis. She was diagnosed with COVID 4 days after an airplane flight. Her symptoms were mild, but progressed 2 or 3 weeks later. So she was kind of mild flu-like symptoms. That's all. She's young. She's 28, 26.
Yeah.
Her symptoms progressed in 2 or 3 weeks to difficulty moving her left foot and weakness on the left side of her body. She had no headaches and experienced no change in her mental state. But it revealed multiple lesions in the right part of the brain, involved in motor control and sensation on the left side of the body.
Oh, sorry, I can't. I'm getting a delay, so I can't. There you go. That's okay. She had no... Oh.
Yeah.
So...
she was treated, and after 6 months, the lesions substantially decreased. She's still under treatment with immunosuppressive medications.
Right.
This patient was the first confirmed case of COVID central nervous system vasculitis in a young, healthy patient with otherwise mild COVID infection. All of those cases before were on older people with severe cases.
Right.
So this is kind of a concerning thing, new pattern. It's part of the fact...
Hang on. Is this from the Delta thing, is it?
Yeah, this is from Delta.
Okay.
This is from Delta. This is a new thing, and it's that pattern of younger people getting COVID and getting these kind of complex symptoms and long-term symptoms.
Was she completely healthy? She didn't have any...
She was completely healthy. No underlying symptoms. She's 26.
So, Chris said, could this have anything to do with not aspirating the vaccination shot?
The vax shot? I don't know. I don't think they're looking at it. And the problem is they don't know. They don't have any data on how many people have had the vax shot aspirated or not, because people don't do it.
Yeah.
There's been people in the medical profession who've asked for this to be done.
Yeah.
And at least in the UK, they've said, well, we don't think this is really necessary.
Yeah.
And we'll look into it in the future. But I mean, people in the medical profession are saying, look, this is a really simple thing to do.
Yeah. Are you going to ask when they give that second shot? Are you going to ask them? You're going to ask them. Did you ask them the first time?
No, I didn't realize.
You didn't remember?
Before I picked up, I'll know that, and I didn't remember.
You didn't remember, yeah. Right.
Okay, but yes, that's a really good question, Chris.
Good question.
I think there's certainly issues around that. And the fact that there's no data because nobody's doing it.
So is she actually recovering somewhat, is she?
She is. She's still under treatment. It's been 6 months.
And this is the first person that's had that, is it?
Yeah, the first young person.
Young person, right.
With mild symptoms that's had that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now the happier news.
Oh, there's happier news?
Yeah. Let's see, that was...
We were hoping to keep it a little bit lighter than this, but I think that those things, the IPCC thing, is important to cover.
Yeah. Global eradication of COVID-19 is probably feasible, more so than polio, and more so than polio, less so than smallpox, say public health experts. And this is mainly because our ability to look at these viruses on a chemical molecular basis has really improved. So this says it's probably feasible, more so than polio, less than for smallpox. Suggests a comparative score of technical, sociopolitical, and economic factors for all three infections. This was published in the online journal BMJ Global Health.
Yeah.
Vaccination, public health measures, and global interest in achieving this goal as a result of the huge financial and social havoc wrought by the coronavirus pandemic all make eradication possible, but the main challenge lies in securing sufficiently high vaccine coverage and being able to respond quickly enough to variants that may evade immunity, say the authors. And there is the rub.
Yeah.
Because, we've just talked about global warming.
Yeah.
And the fact that, yes, we might be able to, go overshoot 1.5 degrees increase in global temperature and bring it back to 1.4 if everybody does the right thing now.
Yeah.
And, well, people have known what the right thing is for decades, and it would have been a hell of a lot easier to have started decades ago, because we would have been able to do it slowly with time, and now we can't.
Yeah.
It's unlikely we'll ever do it.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the same. Right now, people are not cooperating. People are, like the third world or the South, whatever you
Global
want to
South,
call
yeah.
that group of ex-colonial countries, are massively suffering.
Yeah.
And they, even where they have the capacity to do vaccines, they're prohibited by patent and people with greed.
I think hasn't the US decided that they might release the patent again? I mean,
they're asking the companies to release it. The US doesn't have the patents.
Yeah. The companies,
And
it's just disgusting. This
and
is
all of
capitalism,
this,
isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, all of this. There's some other really nice news about how things could improve, how we could address this thing, and what I see as somebody who's worked in technology studies for a while is that a lot of this comes down to the major shift in the 80s between the principles of free scientific information, or FSI, and proprietary information.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, you had a massive shift in universities and so on, where everybody was patenting everything,
right,
including universities, including researchers' work. And there was some of the early vaccines and immunological tests and stuff were based on free scientific information. It was the principle that scientists work together, and put out this information so everybody can use it, so everybody can then develop the next bit.
Yeah.
And monoclonal antibodies were discovered by a couple of English people. The technologies worked out, and it was free scientific information.
Yeah.
And they insisted it was free scientific information.
Yeah.
And then this company in the United States tried to do a slight modification and patent the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they said, you can't use it. It's ours. And it was taken to court and knocked back. And then Eli Lilly bought out that company, and Eli Lilly took it to court and won. And so they privatized that free scientific information. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then suddenly everybody has to come to them and pay them a shitload of money to use this information that scientists working for the joy of science and for the betterment of humanity have put out for free, and then companies take it over. Things, it's disgusting. It's like erythromycin was discovered by a researcher, a Filipino researcher in the Philippines, and he was working for one of the big drug companies, and erythromycin is the major antibiotic they use for kids, for all kinds of childhood diseases and so on. And of course the drug company made billions on that.
They're still making money.
And he didn't, the guy who actually came up with it got next to nothing. And he said, look, I should get something, and I'm not going to ask for anything for myself. What I'd like you to do is give some small percentage to a fund to help researchers, young people who want to get into pharmaceutical research in the Philippines, get an education. He said, I think this would be great, and you'll benefit anyway if there's more people like me. And they refused.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Drug companies are shit.
This is Eli Lilly.
I think that was Eli Lilly again. I'm not absolutely sure it was Lilly.
So how long ago is this, and is he still alive?
I don't think so.
Right.
When was that? That was in the 70s, I think.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, so this has been going on a long time. The drug companies are just awful. They're businesses, and so I read that kind of thing about if everybody came together and worked on it and took this on as a global task, and stopped worrying about money and all this sort of stuff. Well, right now, if you stop worrying about money, India has a fabulous pharmaceutical industry. It's capable of producing almost any kind of drug, and they could easily produce mRNAs. And they're not allowed to because of the patent stuff.
If
I was India, I would just say fuck you.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Do they actually have the ability to do it now without, like?
I think so.
Right. Okay. Well, I would just say F you and just go ahead and do it. That's what I would do.
Yeah. Well,
Why
I
don't
think
they do that?
India would then be subject to World Trade Organization, and they could completely try and boycott and put sanctions on India's economies globally.
All right.
That's part of the World Trade Organization stuff.
Yeah.
There's TRIPS, trade-related intellectual property.
Why? Why isn't India receiving Sinovac or Sputnik 5 or something?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know they're using. I'm not sure what they're using there. But why? England has massive extra. I saw another article today. It has like 130 million surplus doses. After they've vaccinated everybody in the country. And they're just hanging on to it. They won't give it. England, the UK.
The UK is hanging on to it.
They won't give it to anybody.
Anybody in the UK or anybody else outside the UK?
They won't give it to a developing world country. And this is stuff that is way in surplus of what they need to vaccinate everybody in the country. they're in surplus by about 130 million doses.
Yeah, yeah. It's just
Yeah.
disgusting.
And you've got situations like we were talking about in Indonesia,
Yeah.
where we'll come to that, I think. And
Yeah.
anyway, yes,
Do you
there
think
are.
you should put No Man's Sky on so people have got something to watch?
I'm sorry. I'll
Oh, you were going to
switch.
continue on with
Yeah.
that?
This is one of the new things that was kind of exciting to me. It's a near atomic look at 3 ways you could actually address and probably stop and possibly eradicate COVID. This is the nanobodies. They're minute. Antibodies. They're much smaller antibodies than is usual, and they can develop them. They've worked out these antibodies and how they work through looking at the actual atomic structure of the COVID spike molecule. This is a little picture of the top of that. And there are 3 different types that they've identified. One would be able to block the part of the spike that interacts with the cell, and if it blocked it, then the COVID cells or viruses could not enter the cells. So 3 different methods. Blocking it from infecting cells. The first, let's see, this is the first time anyone has systematically classified ultrapotent nanobodies based on their structure. By doing this, we've not only provided details on the mechanisms our antibodies use to defeat COVID, but also revealed directions on how to design future therapeutics. I mean, this is like huge. But this is at like basic science level still. She and his team announced that they'd extracted tiny but powerful antibody fragments from llamas, which could be fastened, and this is through genetic engineering, which could be fastened into inhalable therapeutics, something that you could inhale rather than getting a shot, to prevent and treat COVID-19. Preclinical studies have verified that the potent nanobodies prevent and treat severe COVID-19 in hamsters. They're still using it on animals instead of on people, reducing virus particles in their respiratory tract by 1 millionfold. Okay, let's see. Class 1 outcompetes the part of the human cell that the spike protein binds to. In other words, the COVID virus will want to bind to the antibody instead of the cell, because it works better. Class 2 binds to a region on the spike protein that's persisted permutations of coronaviruses, and that includes SARS, not just COVID, but all kinds of coronaviruses. It can neutralize COVID and its variants, and also other coronaviruses. So this is something that can work on all kinds of coronaviruses. It's really excellent. It's like fantastic science. It's Star Trek science. This is Star Trek stuff, where the doctor gets his little injector and goes tick in the neck, and you're fixed. Class 3 latches onto the region of the spike protein that larger antibodies cannot access, because it's a very small antibody. By binding to this area, the nanobody prevents the protein from folding in the way that it needs to enter the human cells. And this is the kind of thing that could actually create what they call an extinction vaccine, where you don't just treat the symptoms to make them to stop the worst aspects of the disease, but you can actually you can prevent infection entirely. And that means the vaccine, you can eliminate the vaccine. Eliminate the virus. You could actually eliminate it in the way smallpox or polio have been eliminated.
Can that work on other viruses?
And it would work on other viruses.
Wow.
Other coronaviruses. And it shows a way you can, through using these really high magnification things where you can look at the molecular structure of the viruses and get these nanobodies, these very, very tiny antibodies that can do these things, that can create a situation where you could eliminate that virus.
Gee, there'd be a lot of drug companies wouldn't be happy with that, though, would they?
Probably not.
So who would develop
this is science.
Didi?
What?
Who developed this?
A group in Chicago, I think it is.
Wow.
Let's see, where is she?
Because
at
BAM
Pitt.
Didi?
Yeah.
Because BAM goes all their vaccine profits.
Yeah. It's Pitt and Case Western Reserve University. That's in Pittsburgh.
Right.
In Pennsylvania. And the doctor who's the scientist who's leading this is Yi Shi.
Yi Shi.
Yi Shi. And he's leading the team that's doing this.
Right.
And he's partnered with structural biologist Chang Zheng and James Conway. It's interesting that all these Chinese people working on this.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
The evil Chinese.
Are they working for...
They're working in Pennsylvania.
So they're
in
not
the university.
Working... Oh, okay.
They're not working for China.
Right.
They're just Chinese people working in Pennsylvania in a university.
That's too bad. Excuse me, that's too bad they're not working for China, because that just means the US has another thing they can hold over people's heads.
Well, they're working in a University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine.
Right.
So, he may go to China periodically in conferences. He may give them this information. I would.
Of course.
This should be free scientific information.
But could you imagine vaccine like big farmers sort of thinking, oh my God, there goes our tens of billions of
pharma
dollars.
will try and grab this. But, yeah. Okay, so then we have another Star Trek science thing. Nanocontainers can transport substances into cells where they can take effect. This is a method used, for example, the mRNA vaccines currently being employed against COVID-19. Similar transporters can also be used to deliver labeled substances into cells in order to study basic cellular functions. This is like... what did 7 of 9 call those? Were it nanites?
Nanoparticles?
No, 7 of 9. What did she have? Nanites?
I don't know.
Remember what she had?
7 and 9, the Borg, yeah. No.
Yeah, but she had these things in her they were nanobots of some sort.
I thought they were nanoparticles, no?
They were nanites, I think they called them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Anyway, these are nanocontainers. This is bringing in another different technology. And this is a way that you could deliver cancer drugs and so on to sites. And
right.
It deliver things into cells. They've developed scientists at the University of Munster have recently developed a new type of nanocontainer constructed entirely of biological components. There's ones that have been, to take advantage of their, let's see, there's been issues because some of these nanocontainers are not organic and they react not so well. But these are ones that are biological. They're not based on lipids, but on sugar compounds, which are sealed with a shell of protein structure, polypeptides, the thickness of which is precisely tailored. We produce the components of our nanocontainers synthetically. They're taken up by the cells, and due to the overall structure we've developed, also degraded by them, just like naturally occurring substances. So, anyway, I won't go into the details of this. It's kind of just pretty exciting.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be
because
great?
it's a way of targeting.
You don't think Big Pharma would buy that up and then just put it away
I think they'll
did
try.
the electric cars?
And this is what's wrong with, what?
Oh, nothing.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, do you think they'll buy up that and then put it away like, the electric cars?
I don't know. I'm really hoping that this whole COVID thing, really shows up capitalism in that way.
Yeah.
And people don't want to do that anymore, and decide to go with free scientific information instead of proprietary information.
Yeah.
Proprietary information is such a shit, and it really holds science back.
Anyway, excuse me.
Okay, the next one I have is another COVID one. It's about Indonesia, which is currently undergoing a huge wave of COVID. Indonesia is one of the most populous countries in the world. 277 million people, about the population of the U.S., but of course it's tiny, relatively. It's only a number of smallish islands.
Yeah.
An archipelago. And a lot of it is very rural. A lot of it is jungle in Sumatra and down towards PNG and that kind of stuff. And so for them, dealing with COVID is just awful. And they have, I think, about 9% fully vaccinated so far. They've been using Sinovac, and one of the problems with Sinovac is it's showing up as not being particularly good against the Delta variant.
Oh, yeah.
China has been working hard on improving that, and they're also working hard on coming up with an mRNA virus vaccine. Sinovac is not an mRNA vaccine.
Yeah.
It's more like AstraZeneca or something. This article says roughly 5.8% or 15 million Indonesians have been fully vaccinated. John Hopkins says it's something like 9%. Anyway, that's not a lot for a wave of Delta in a very crowded country.
Yeah.
Where people are either living very, very close to one another, or sort of spread out into the jungles, living in villages and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so this article is about a Jakarta-based travel agency which has been giving vaccination tours for people in Indonesia with money. Some people, like most places, there is an elite class. Some people have enough money. You need $13,000, and that'll get you 3 nights in Los Angeles and a Johnson & Johnson single
$13,000. Who's doing this?
$1,300.
Oh, sorry. Who's doing this again?
A Jakarta-based travel agency.
Oh God.
And with the cooperation of the U.S. And
God.
they go there and get a Johnson & Johnson 1-dose vaccine. Because they'd rather have a good vaccine than what's available currently.
But that's just awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it's awful. And when you think that the average monthly income in Indonesia is $230.
Yeah.
And that's what, about $49 a week?
$49 a week, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a whole lot of money. And I know, like that average would have been brought up by the fact that some people are making money. People working for government, people working in the tourist industry,
yeah,
and that kind of stuff. There are people who have made a fair bit of money in Indonesia, and so that'll bring that average up. And so most people would be making probably significantly less than that $49 a week.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, those people are just kind of out of luck. But another article I saw recently, and I might put on No Man's Sky for a minute. People can look at that. People in Indonesia, or a lot of scientists are thinking, because the mutations are based on the number of people who actually are infected with COVID, and Indonesia looks like it's going to have a massive wave of infection when Delta hits an basically unvaccinated population that isn't good with their tracing and isn't good with their testing. Yeah. Then what's liable to happen is this is where the next major variants of significance come up.
Yeah.
And partly the reason that is because countries like the UK, who have 130 million doses of vaccine, aren't willing, that are extra, that are completely superfluous to their needs, are just hanging on to it with vaccine nationalism, even though they don't need them. They have enough. That's what they have on top of what they need to vaccinate every single person in the UK.
Yeah.
And that 130 million doses of vaccine would go a long way in Indonesia to helping people, prevent that next variant.
Yeah.
But they're not going to do it. They're going to hang on to that.
Yeah.
Let's see. One of the other things that was kind of shocking is that, let's see, where is it? Something like, I don't remember how many. Do you remember? I was talking to you about it before.
What's
how many
that?
doctors have died of COVID
400
in Indonesia?
and something.
400 and something?
Yeah.
Something like that.
In Indonesia.
In Indonesia.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a shocking number of doctors to have died so far. Like 433 or something like 34 doctors.
Yeah.
And right now, the people who are they're kind of roping in medical students and trainees and stuff to treat people because because the doctors have died.
Yeah.
And this is partly because they don't have the equipment to test people. It's not easy to trace people. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a real mess.
Yeah.
Okay, enough. That bad news was probably enough. We can go on to a different subject entirely. You want to? Is anybody else talking in the
No.
thing?
No. Chris, that was the last thing that was said from Chris about aspirating.
About
the problem too is, it's very early in the morning and people are probably running around trying to do stuff and.
Okay, so the next thing is about trans people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is I'm not even sure why they needed to make this point. Two classes of trans kids are emerging. Those who have access to puberty blockers and those who don't.
Hi, Chris.
This was in a pediatrics magazine.
Yeah.
And I think it was repeated in the conversation. For people who may never have thought about it, it might sound reasonable to require trans kids and wait till they're adults before they can receive certain forms of care, known as gender-affirming treatment. And that's what the legislation all over the U.S. is trying to do. Basically to prevent kids, and this is what the transphobic stuff from Alison Schreier and stuff have been, and what has been going on in the UK are trying to push, is preventing kids from getting care, gender-affirming care, or getting hormone blockers, particularly. And this article is saying, well, that's creating two classes of people. There's always been two classes of people.
Yeah.
Because some people have managed to get hormone blockers.
Yeah.
And when you get hormone blockers at an early age, it means that you are not affected by puberty. And that means you don't go through all of the irreversible changes. For a woman, that means developing wider hips and breasts and things like that. For people who are assigned male at birth, that means, I should say, I said women, I should have said assigned female at birth people.
Yeah.
Assigned male at birth people, it means having your voice deepened, which is irrevocable.
Yeah.
It means having broader shoulders, narrower hips, which are skeletal changes, which are irrevocable. Certain changes in your skull and things like that, which are irrevocable. You can get some surgery to do some work on your skull, but there's other skeletal changes. There's no way you can change.
Yeah.
And those will be with you forever.
Yeah.
Because you went through that puberty.
Yeah.
You'll end up having facial hair, if you were assigned male at birth, that you'll have to get rid of through expensive, difficult, long-lasting processes.
Yeah.
It can cost up to $10,000 just to do that, to get rid of your facial hair. And this is all stuff you're forcing on kids. That's, they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah. Forcing on them to prevent them from doing those things.
By preventing them to get hormone blockers, you're forcing them to go through these changes, and it forces them into this that they're going to have to try and deal with.
Yeah.
And this pediatrician or pediatrics researcher, it was saying, it's a critical stage of your life. I mean, he goes into the whole thing about suicidality and stuff like that, which a lot of stuff has been said about. But, what really does is it creates immense financial hardship and physical hardship to try and undo at least some of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah. trans masculine people, to get top surgery, is difficult and expensive enough. For trans feminine people, things like electrolysis and that kind of thing are difficult, and then they have things that they're never going to be able to change, like their voice or their skeletal structure and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly expensive, and then
Yeah.
you have to live with it, and then people are liable to know that you're trans, and then you have to live with that and
Yeah.
the discrimination you're going to face when everybody knows you're trans. Now, there are some trans people who are passable and don't have any problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who aren't.
Yeah.
But people who do get hormone blockers
Yeah.
and then are able to have and don't go through the puberty of the gender they were assigned at birth, and then go through the puberty that of the gender of their identity. I mean, I'm thinking of Georgie Stone, and I've just put some pictures up there. I mean, she's gorgeous. She's
In a stereotypical way.
in a stereotypic way, but I mean, she's also indistinguishable from a cisgender girl.
Yeah.
Because she went through the same skeletal changes as a cisgender woman would,
Yeah.
or a girl would.
Yeah.
She never went through any of the irrevocable changes that cisgender masculine people would.
Yeah. Herb is asking a question.
Oh.
What I wonder is the male difference in skull development.
Okay, there's some differences in the jaw.
Oh, and by the way, Kim got here about 20 minutes
hi,
ago, and she
Kim.
says she's quiet and said hello. Chris
Hi.
said I'll have to drop in about 20 minutes. I don't know what that means, drop in. Does that mean drop out in 20 minutes?
Maybe he's going off and then coming back.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, hi, Kim. So
And Herb's still here,
and Herb,
and he's
yeah,
been enjoying it, he
Yeah.
said.
great. Okay, so basically, a masculine skull tends to have heavier brow ridges, and women's skulls tend to be smoother, particularly above the eye sockets, and also the jaw of cisgender male people
I'll
or
go to
people
work, I see.
is heavier.
Mm.
And these are changes that can be fixed surgically, but it's expensive, and it means, doing weird things to your skull.
Yeah.
And there's not many people who can afford to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And if you have hormone
Excuse me.
blockers, you don't ever have to do that.
Mm.
And if you have hormone blockers and decide you aren't trans, or that's not what you want to do, you just stop taking them, and you go through your normal cisgender puberty. Okay, so I don't know if we want to talk too much more about that. I mean, it's a terrible thing.
If anybody has any questions,
Anybody have any
Didi's
questions?
the one to ask.
And the article goes on to talk about, the way people have been forced to go through conversion therapy. Some of these, he uses a 70s example of a boy with a pseudonym Craig, who was a patient at UCLA's, University of California's Feminine Boy Project, a government-funded experiment. It's actually a conversion therapy thing that sought to evaluate ways to reverse feminine behavior in boys. Now, why in hell would the government fund a university?
Which government was this?
The U.S. government.
Oh.
This was in the 70s. The government funded the University of California to do experiments to evaluate ways to reverse feminine behavior in boys. Because, oh my God, you wouldn't want a boy to look too nurturing.
No.
You know. Craig was subjected to shame-inducing treatments, with therapists counseling his father to beat Craig when he failed to conform to masculine norms. Of course, he ended up killing himself.
Yeah. Poor little boy.
Yeah, they say, oh yes, things have changed, thank God. But now they're trying to wind things back, and there's all these states putting laws against giving young trans people hormone blockers.
Yeah.
Which forces them to go through in a sense, the wrong puberty, and will cause them all kinds of financial, emotional, and other kinds of distress.
Yeah.
Lead to a number of people of killing themselves or living much worse lives. Even if later on they transition, they're going to have a whole lot more difficult time of it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, after having gone through the wrong puberty, have a much more difficult time passing and being just accepted. And passing is a horrible notion anyway.
Yeah.
People shouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
No.
But the reality is they do.
Yeah.
People go by their preconceived notions. And if somebody is passing, they look at, somebody like Cat Black or Natalie Wynn.
Cat Black is a YouTuber, YouTube creator, influencer.
Yeah.
It's a YouTube. She's a YouTube influencer, and
and Natalie Wynn.
And Natalie Wynn is ContraPoints, who's a YouTube influencer as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a number of YouTube people who are out trans people. Who are some others? Ty Turner, Mia Mulder, and stuff. People like that who are quite passable people.
Yeah, passable in quotes.
Yeah, in quotes. In other words, they walk down the street, they walk into a shop, people say, "Can I help you, ma'am?" Or "Can I help you, sir?" There's no question in people's minds what their gender is if they don't happen to know that they are trans.
Yeah.
If they haven't been informed.
Yeah.
And they don't have those problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might have other kind of problems, but they don't have those problems.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be.
And it shouldn't be that way.
No.
And they will say that.
Yeah.
They do say that.
Yeah.
But, people shouldn't be so worried about people's gender expression.
No.
Because people are just people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It gets tiresome.
And it's just human variation and human expression. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's probably enough on that one.
Yeah, I think
Unless
so,
you want to say anything more?
No.
Okay.
I think actually, let's see, we've been going for... Hang on a sec. How long have we been going for now? I think we started at 9:30. It's now
11:30.
Yeah.
11:40.
Oh, well, I think that's probably enough, Didi, don't you?
Well,
unless you wanted to quickly go.
Okay, there's some quick ones that are kind of interesting.
Yeah.
We could do the analysis of Stonehenge.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that.
That's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you want to... There's the bit further down where it says what it's actually made out of, quartz. And
Yeah, you want to talk about this one? Because you like this one.
No, it's okay. You can talk about it. I'll add in stuff. But I thought this was interesting. So much has been done about Stonehenge, really. I mean, God.
We all love Stonehenge.
It's funny. What's that?
We all love Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I always think about the... what's the name of that show?
Spinal Tap.
Spinal Tap, yeah. Yeah, when I think about Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Okay, so Do you want to talk about the bit about the quartz? And
Okay. I used to love the whole things that Stonehenge, where they discovered that it's actually a really amazing computer for astronomical things. And in very early, this was computer stuff in the 60s, I think, where they ran that through, and they found Stonehenge predicted all of these astronomical events that they knew of. And then they found it predicted some astronomical events that they didn't know of, and they checked with the world, they checked with astronomers, and they discovered that yes, those events actually happen, and Stonehenge was predicting it. So they learned about those astronomical things from Stonehenge.
Oh, wow.
Because they ran it through a computer.
Wow.
Yeah.
I read today that part of Stonehenge is actually part of an older monument. They sort of used parts of another monument to make it. Anyway, do you want to read
really?
that bit? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think most people know what Stonehenge is.
Yeah.
The rocks were brought from far away, from the actual Salisbury Plain. And it's been protected for a number of years. It can't be drilled, cut, or subjected to chemical analysis. So it's been difficult to look at. It hasn't always been so well protected. In 1958, workers hired to restore the monument drilled into one of the stones and extracted core samples. Parts of one of the cores was discovered in a museum in 2019. Another was held as a souvenir by a worker who immigrated to the U.S. A third was never been found. And I think there were only 3. 3 years ago, the souvenir sample was returned to England as being studied. And this is where they got this information.
Yeah.
And what they found out, they cut it into very thin wafers and found that it was 99.7% quartz of different grain sizes that kind of formed almost a cement. They were like an interlocking mosaic of quartz crystals.
Yeah.
And this is one of the reasons that it has managed to not be eroded.
Yeah.
It's put up. It's one of the reasons it's lasted so long.
Yeah.
And apparently the sediments where it was formed were dated to approximately 66 to 23 million years ago.
Yeah.
And some of the grains might be dated as far back as 252 million years ago.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling.
And a few were formed as far back as 1 billion years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's just
so these
crazy.
are just incredibly old bits of quartz, all mixed together to form these quartz monoliths, and that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Should we do the thing about vitamin D and then we'll wrap it up?
Okay. There's the bad fat. We were going to do bad fat.
Oh, the bad fat. We could do that. Sure.
Okay. You want to do the bad fat?
No, you do it, and I'll just...
Okay. Bad fat, which is... God, what do you call it? I'm having a senior
adipose
moment.
tissue? No?
No. No. Remember, there's good fat and bad fat.
Oh, well, I think they're
Good
talking about
cholesterol, bad fat.
subcutaneous stuff, aren't they? No?
I don't think
Oxidized
so.
fat?
Oxidized fat molecules.
Anyway, they're basically
if
saying...
they're ingested by killer T cells,
I've got
killer
to stop.
T cells are the cells that are actually killing cancer cells and virus-infected cells and disease-infected cells.
Yeah.
They're part of the immune system.
Yeah.
And there's helper T cells and killer T cells. And the killer T cells actually are the ones that if they see a cancerous cell or a virus-infected cell will kill them.
Yeah.
And the oxidized fat gets absorbed by the killer T cells, and it suppresses their ability to kill these cells.
Yeah.
So it would work. Yeah, it means that oxidized fat molecules will not only, be bad for cancer, but also bad for viral infections.
Yeah, so basically if you're overweight, there's a problem, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, but also apparently if you're overweight, you actually, your vitamin D has a lot more trouble getting into your system. So isn't that interesting? It's kind of a circular, there's a problem with, there's a lot of people that are overweight, and so they probably have even lower vitamin D than, say, people that are already D deficient in the world. There's a great D deficiency.
Yeah.
And there's also we're going to go on to another article about addiction and vitamin D, which is really interesting. But I actually think there's a lot of things that are going on now that is due to D deficiency. All these different things are kind of, you know what I mean? There's so many things that are linked into D deficiency now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Medically.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What was Chris is saying that they didn't save the chat. The chat wasn't
really?
saved.
I
saw the chat.
Yeah, I saw the chat. That's
morning.
weird. Let me have a look and see. Is this the last chat? The
last one on Sunday.
The live last one. Yeah. Oh, when is it?
I hope it's come through.
That's weird.
We're not doing this through YouTube. We're doing this through Restream.
Oh no! Do they not? Does it
well,
not?
But I watched that and it was and I saw the chat.
You don't think? Yeah. Well, if we can see it, surely other people can see it. Yes.
Check and see.
Let me see.
We'll do that. I'll just put a bit of No Man's Sky on.
Okay.
While we're doing this.
That's all right. I can look. Yeah. There's all the chat there, Chris. Unless we're the only ones that are seeing it, and nobody else is. I can see it in the last live stream. So.
So hopefully the chat will come out on this one too.
Well, I mean, unless we're the only people that can see it.
Oh.
But I don't think so.
No, because why would I be able to see it?
No, I'm talking about...
Because I'm not your channel.
I'm talking... Oh, I see. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Although you're looking through my channel, you're actually...
I wasn't.
You're logged into my username, aren't you?
Well, yeah, when I'm making it, but I'm not...
yeah, I see. Oh,
but
you
not
can
when
still
I'm
see
watching it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, well then that's... yeah, because you just log out of my thing, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, it should be there, Chris. Anyway, maybe because I just replayed it without reloading. Yeah, maybe that's it.
Okay.
Oh, and Kim says, I saw the chat replay from Sunday's live stream. Okay, then.
Okay, yeah.
You might want to move that down just a little bit, Dee Dee.
Yeah. It's kind of...
There you go.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what were we saying? Yeah, so anyhow, the people that have sort of a weight problem or somewhat obese have probably lower vitamin D.
Yeah.
And, of course... Like I mentioned the other day, black people and people of color with high levels of melanin in their skin it's been scientifically found that they have low levels of vitamin D. They're D deficient, which makes you more susceptible to severe symptoms of COVID and dying in ICUs. So that's something really, really important that I keep trying to mention, so that I'm hoping that because 3 times more black people die of COVID than they do, and there's a lot of other reasons for that too, but that would be one of the reasons. Low D. Anyway, should we talk now about the addiction and vitamin D,
okay.
low vitamin D? Now this is really interesting, and this is why this is such an important. Doctors say it's more like a hormone than an actual vitamin, and it's incredibly important for calcium uptake in the bones and all that kind of stuff. It's basically, if you're D deficient, you're very susceptible to serious illnesses like cancer and diabetes. And there was a great amount of people that were diabetic in Tasmania, and I really think that's possibly too because of D deficiency.
Yeah.
That's partly in part sort of thing. greatly contributes to it. But anyway, did you want to look through this this D article in relation to addiction?
I will have to look for it. I think it's my thing. But
Herb says, "I'm starting my weight loss program now. No more donuts. You're all scaring me straight health wise." We've been doing some intermittent fasting, which actually is really initially, the first day it's kind of a little bit tricky, but it actually I found it to be really. I felt much better after about 2 days. It sort of resets your system, and it's kind of, I don't know, it gives all your internal organs a rest from constantly processing food. And it's really good. So we just and we've been doing that for a little while now, and we just drink water for say 16 hours. We don't do that every single day, but like some days it might be 12 hours we don't eat, and we just drink water, or it could be 16 hours. Sometimes it's 20 hours, and then sometimes we'll do 24 hours and we'll just drink water. And it actually really it really makes a difference, doesn't it, Dee Dee?
Yeah.
And it also helps with it's been proven that it actually can help you with scientifically it seems like it's a very beneficial thing to do health wise.
This is something my is it all right? Can I? Yeah. This was something my biochem teacher talked about. It was biochem, maybe it was pollutants and toxicology. That fasting 1 day a week was a really good idea.
Yeah.
Because the all of the enzymes and so on tend to the way they work is most of them have a certain structure, and they will lock onto some receptor site, and that will create some sort of minor molecular change in shape.
Yeah.
And they will sit there. And the problem is you can get, they can just keep sitting there if you keep eating.
Oh, what's that? What can keep sitting there, Dee?
All of the enzymes and stuff tend to just keep sitting there as you put more food.
Oh,
and
yes.
There's more nutrients and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
Because the food will change the amount of different enzymes and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you fast, and what happens is they just keep producing these more enzymes, and more and more cells get kind of clogged up with these things.
Yeah.
Because the receptors are all filled with these enzymes.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you fast is the amount of enzymes and stuff decrease, and they withdraw from those sites, and they often get destroyed by macrophages and things.
Yeah.
And once you've done that, it frees up a lot of biological kind of resources.
Right.
From as those proteins get broken down.
Yeah.
And it also frees up all those receptor sites.
Uh-huh.
And your system just starts working much more efficiently.
Yes.
And that's important in all kinds of health ways.
It is. Yeah. Well,
he advised all the people in his class to fast once a week.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah.
We've probably been doing it more often than probably we've been doing it just to sort of clean up our systems and stuff, but I just find it kind of, and even it seems to, I feel like it regulates the leptin, which is that kind of, how sometimes you can get into this thing of sometimes you can get this thing where you're sort of eating, and then instead of feeling this satiety, you sort of, after a couple of hours, you might want to have a snack on something else, and it seems to kind of stop that. If you do it for, I don't know, every other day, maybe 16 hours where you're not eating, and then 8 hours where you are, and to try and keep, just don't go crazy in that 8 hours. But if you sort of try and do that, and maybe even do a 24-hour fast of like a 24-hour water fast, it tends to kind of knock that sort of inclination to want to eat later sort of thing. You kind of you feel this satiety, don't you, Dee Dee?
Yeah. Furious is here. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, Furious. I have to change my username. And and that's a really, that sort of shows that in some ways that your system is kind of out of whack. That that you may not feel completely satisfied after you've sort of eaten a reasonable meal. So that's where I feel like that's one of many adjustments, sort of balances that intermittent fasting does. Don't you think, Didi?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I think it's a great balance. I think it affects those things which the satiety and that, as you say,
Yeah.
like it really does work that way.
Yeah.
I've found that myself, like I find I don't go crazy. A much smaller amount of food makes me satisfied.
Smaller amount of food, and there's none of this sort of craving. But if you sort of do it often enough, there's not that sort of craving carbs. Even though, of course, if you got depression, which I do get at times, and you tend to crave carbs because it helps with dopamine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it tends to reduce the carb craving and the sugar cravings and the oil cravings, like wanting to have things that are oily. I mean, like good fats are great, like avocado and things like that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about fats that are just kind of like little spring rolls with fat in them and stuff. And I can always tell when I'm getting a little bit wacky with my system when I start to crave, things with oil in it, like little vegan spring rolls and that sort of thing. So I think it's a really great thing to do, and it actually. Who was saying it? Herb said, so fasting on Sabbath may have important health benefits. Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe it does. So anyway, that's our experience. Hey, I think it's a great thing to do.
Yeah.
And just kind of keeps, it just, it helps you kind of self-clean your system, doesn't it, Dee Dee?
Yeah, it does.
You give your organs and your little cells enough time to kind of clean up the cells. And it probably increases lifespan too. I mean, people people who are underweight apparently tend to have longer lifespans, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about people that have been malnourished and all of that, but
no.
But if you've you're underweight,
people who are thinner,
tend to. And also, there's certain animal products that actually affect the. Is it the TOR, Dee Dee, which actually affects in your intestine, and that affects your longevity in a negative way.
Yeah.
So there are problems, with consuming animal products apart from
there's a whole
terrible
lot of
violence.
Problems. There's a whole lot of problems with your.
If you want to know the problems, just check out nutritionfacts.org. I've linked to the intermittent fasting things there. Of course, the main reason not to eat animal products is because it's violence. They're all results of violence, all of them, not just meat.
Yeah.
Anyway, what, Dee Dee?
Another good source of information is howtogovegan.com.
Oh yeah, but that's not a nutrition thing.
No, but it's fabulous.
Thank you, Dee Dee.
It gives you a lot of nutritional information because you put it in there.
There is that, but I mean, I want people to go vegan for ethical reasons.
Yeah.
And of health and the climate crisis are ancillary benefits of being vegan.
Okay. Okay, so we go back to the article?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So anyway, we were going to talk about the vitamin D in relation to this addiction, which I think is really, really interesting and something that, if you have a leaning to that kind of thing, I don't know. There's just so many things that hinge on, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, so vitamin D deficiency strongly exaggerates the craving for and effects of opioids. potentially increasing the risk for dependence and addiction, according to a new study led by researchers in Massachusetts General Hospital. Now, I just want to mention that being vegan, I don't condone any of the, using mice by the millions and torturing and killing them. And I feel like if we had a mostly vegan society, we would be calling for alternatives to animal experimentation, which they do exist now.
Yes.
It's just that there's no motivation to use alternatives to animals, because
they might be a little more expensive.
Because animals are property, and we see them as resources, and there's no motivation to move away from that. So that's why we need a vegan society, mostly vegan society, to insist that scientists do everything they can to move away from torturing and killing animals, because it's a horror story. Anyway, but this I don't want to really go into anything about animals in here, but anyhow, this is sort of like something that the effects of having low D in your system. Usually, it means that you have an exacerbated or euphoria when you take opioids. So that sort of can't be good. And this is just something that I think, like rehab centers and doctors, the medical community could really ensure that everybody, particularly people who have opioid addictions, check their D levels and all that kind of stuff.
One of the things they're actually looking at is the idea of, low D increases the risk of dependence and addiction for people who are getting pain relief. So that pain relief, if you have low D, your pain relief is liable to lead to an addiction.
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the main concerns here. But yeah, all that stuff about for people who are addicted, it would affect it very strongly too.
Yeah. So anyway, that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And except for the mice, don't go down there. We don't want to see them, the torturings and stuff. It's dreadful.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's. I think that's just about it, really, isn't there?
I had one more thing, which was the
I'm sorry. Yeah. What
the
was
environmental impact of bottled water is up to 3,500 times higher than tap water, and I don't know that should be any surprise to anybody. But somebody actually did a study to see how much worse, drinking bottled water is.
Say that again. What was it?
The environmental impact of bottled water.
Yeah.
Of getting water from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Of making plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Of having the petrochemicals for the plastic, making plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Shipping them into a factory, running a factory to put water into those bottles, and then shipping them all around the place, and then having to deal with the waste of all these plastic bottles, means that the environmental impact of bottled water is 3,500 times higher than tap water. And this is
crazy.
A real concern, because of the consumption of bottled water has been increasing sharply in recent years on a global scale. It's a bit like the things with those little Nescafe things. Where
yes, the guy who made them.
Coffee pods.
Yeah.
The guy who made them wanted to kill himself because...
What, literally?
I think he literally felt suicidal.
Oh, wow.
Because he made these things thinking, well, this is kind of a nice idea. And then, has seen these things are everywhere, and the amount of plastic in the ocean, and the amount of plastic everywhere from these little coffee pods.
Yeah.
And he thought, I did this.
Yes.
Yes. It's like that woman who started the gender reveal party, wanting to, people who've done some little thing that they think, oh yeah, this is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And then it turns into some disastrous
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Oh, Herb was saying, so, was he saying D levels high, good for reducing addiction? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. That's the idea. Because if you have low D levels, you're more likely to experience euphoria after
Yeah.
taking opioids and stuff.
And
so.
good for avoiding addiction if you have to have pain relief for anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's just, I don't know. It's so important. Like, I can't get over how important having good D levels are.
Yeah.
Hey, Didi.
Yeah.
I mean, really and truly.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Dawn. How are you? We're almost ready to wrap it up. We've been going for, through 2.5 hours now. Oh, it's such a shame. Yeah, so, anyway, I think that was about, that's a nightmare. That's a horror story, environmental impact of bottled water.
Yeah. Think of all those bottles everywhere.
Hey?
All those bottles everywhere. And I mean, tips say that they're going to recycle stuff and councils, but a lot of times they don't.
No. I don't know what's going on with all that anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, look at poor old Flint, right? Flint,
Yeah.
Michigan, with their dreadful situation with the water there, where I mean, they it's situations like that you can understand. I mean, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's just nuts. I don't know. Sometimes, like, I was walking around a shop today, and it was one of those, where they're selling very cheap stuff there, right? And I just looked around at the sea of plastic, and I just thought, oh God, it's never where, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, I just think we are so effed, like, because this is just one shop, and there's just like a sea of plastic. And there's shops like that by the gazillions all over the world, and I think, oh my God, we are just so...
And they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, Nepal-Ganj,
Yeah.
They got plastic bottles everywhere.
Oh, well, I'm just talking about just all the different plastic things there are.
Yeah.
Just plastic and stuff, like, it's like capitalism gone mad. There's sort of things that that people are just hoping you'll buy them, and they break after no time, and then that's more plastic. And it's just like, I look at all the obsolescence in toasters. I mean, you could have mountains of toasters and mountains of all these obsolete, these things that have built-in obsolescence. It's just sort of like, and there's here we are, we're on the edge of extinction, and that's still going on. And we've got white goods that are breaking down, and you cannot recycle them. There's just, because this is capitalism, and there's no coordination with it. I mean, they should have had this. If they were going to use plastic, there should have been, say, 5 or a certain amount of grades of plastic that you could always recycle. You know what I mean? Certain types of plastic, and it should have always been able to be recycled right from the start, even though it should have been something else and not plastic. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If they were going to use that awful substance, it should have been. There should have been various, things that were stuck to.
Well, Germany actually had some laws around that at one point. I don't know if they're still enforced. Probably they are. But you know how the inside of refrigerators and refrigerator trays and all that are made of plastic.
Yes.
And they found that one of the major problems was the mixture of materials made recycling, incredibly expensive or impossible and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so they passed a law saying you can't do this mixing of materials.
Right.
You have to, if you're going to use plastic in that thing, all the plastic has to be the same plastic.
Yes.
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 Like, that way you can maybe recycle it.
Yeah.
Without it being too much of a problem. But it's like that kind of thinking. But I mean, we were talking about choice before, about how if people won't make the simple choice to go vegan, how are they going to deal with other choices, like the choice simply not to have bottled water or plastic bottles available at all?
Yeah.
Like, just no.
Yeah.
No, that's just going to be eliminated from your life.
Oh,
You know,
oops. Yeah.
all these different things.
Yeah.
You know, to say, I'm sorry, no, you can't have that kind of fancy toaster that you're going to have to get rid of. And it's like, drives me crazy, some of the things with cars. They talk
Yeah.
about cars being more environmentally efficient because they use less petrol, and a lot of them use less petrol because they use more plastic
Yeah.
and they use more
Yeah.
thinner metal and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But that means if you get a little dent, you have to replace the entire. It's not a little dent. It's like if you lean on the door too hard, there's a dent in it, and to repair that sort of stuff, it costs a fortune, and you have to replace the whole thing, and the cars only last for 10 or 12 years.
Yeah.
Where the
Yeah.
older cars, they weren't as efficient on petrol, but they were bloody, tanks by comparison, and they run
Yeah.
for years. And
Yeah.
it's like older toasters. I mean, toasters used to be
Yeah. Furious
these
Psyops.
things.
Did he? Furious Psyops is saying we have a toaster here that's from the 60s and it still works. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I grew up in the 60s and my mother had one of those flip out toaster things and that went on and on and on for years.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
and on and on. And now it's really like I've been looking for one of those toasters
Yeah.
because I'm so sick of these stupid toasters that kind of, they'll just toast a little bit of after a while they just start to clap out and they only seem to last for 18 months or something. And I can't find those old toasters.
And the other thing, yeah, they've gotten rid of them all.
Yes.
The other thing is that the old toasters, you used to be able to get nichrome wire, and quite often at some point one of the little sides of the toaster that toast one side of the bread would die,
Yeah.
and you could get the wire and just rewrap it
Yeah.
around the
My godfather,
thing.
my godfather in the 60s, he used to fix in his workshop the
Yeah, I used to
toasters and the
fix them.
televisions. He
Yeah.
he had a business where
Yeah.
he fixed these things. I mean, it's outrageous. Now it's like you're renting them. You rent a toaster for like 18 months, then you have to buy another one kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
Renting everything.
Yeah.
And I just think, look at all the materials that went into that fucking toaster.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Look at all the materials that go into various things, and then you just have to like like keyboards. Fortunately, you can recycle keyboards, but I mean, I'm sure there are people that don't know or can't, and the keyboards clap out after, if you use them a lot, which I do, they clap out after about 18 months, and then you have to. I mean, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's
well, I mean,
nuts.
it's like cars. Like I said, the new, more environmentally efficient cars are made of such, kind of chunky materials to make them lighter, which is what's the main reason they're more efficient. And that means that you have to recycle. You have to ditch the entire car after
Yes.
10 or 12 years.
Yes.
And how is that more environmentally efficient?
Yes.
I'm sure the energy that went into building the freaking
Yes.
car.
And cars seem to be even. It's weird, but cars seem to be getting much. Well, we just notice how cars seem to look like they're so much higher than our car. Like if you got hit by one of
We
those
have
cars,
an old car.
yeah, we have a car that's 25 years old or 26 years old, and it's
That's our
really
new one.
great. Pardon?
Yeah, that's our new one.
Oh, a new one's like 21 years old, 22 years old. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the other car is 26 years
I
old
think,
or
yeah.
27, and they work really well. But like when we see, and we live rurally, so we have to drive around because there's like the hills are crazy, and it's like
And
it
there's
would
no
take us all
buses.
day and there's no buses or anything. But we see these other cars when we go into town, and they're like another 2 or 3 feet higher than our car.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
And you can't, when you try to look left or right and there's something in the way, you cannot see past them.
Yeah.
There are all these mini trucks,
They
for all
basically are
the,
off the SUVs.
I thought people,
the SUVs were so big that people started wanting to have tall cars so they could see around the SUVs.
I thought people were supposed to be getting things are supposed to be going smaller. weren't they? What happened to that? What happened to things getting smaller cars? Because it hasn't happened
The car
here.
companies.
It's like we've
and
gone.
people.
Pardon?
The car companies and people. I mean, it's like, I remember seeing that Who Killed the Electric Car movie documentary years ago. And they made the point that, you know, they had these electric cars and they let a bunch of people lease them for a year or something to see how they want. And everybody wanted to keep their electric car.
Yeah.
You know, and they wouldn't let them keep it. They offered to buy them, you know, like this was Hollywood stars saying, I want to buy the thing. No, you can't, you know. But then they were giving discounts or some sort of, what do you call it when the government pays you money? Subsidies for buying these Hummers.
Oh, yeah.
And Hummers are huge and they're incredibly inefficient.
Yeah.
But people like big Hummers. People like, you know, people with their SUVs everywhere in cities. In Sydney, it used to drive anybody who with a half a brain crazy, because you're living in this dense urban thing, and half the cars in the street are SUVs.
Yeah.
You know,
nobody's
using them off road.
No.
You know
that none of them have seen a bog or any sort of dirt road anywhere, and they're all driving SUVs.
There was a fabulous thing. R. Cobb is one of my favorite cartoonists. He was a cartoonist that was very popular in the alternate media in the 60s. And he had this cartoon. He had a couple of interesting car cartoons. One was this thing, you know, ESSO, power to the people, and it had the fist going up, you know, a black fist with a petrol nozzle in his hand, you know. And then there was this other one with a billboard, you know, this traffic jam, you know, bumper to bumper traffic jam.
Yeah.
And this billboard behind the cars, and it was of one of these, you know, cars in the countryside, you know, with along the coast, and people with the top down and, you know, zooming along, and freedom, you know, and it had the same car in the foreground with the housewife and the groceries and the 3 screaming kids in the middle of the traffic jam. And it just made that juxtaposition between the car in the traffic jam and the same model in the advertising on the open road.
Oh,
you know,
sure.
And it just,
Yeah.
He did those wonderful sorts of cartoons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Herb was saying, so Floridians are in good shape for deed level health. Not necessarily. Like Dee Dee actually got plenty of sun. This is like about 12 years ago. She got plenty of sun, was out doing stuff on building, you know, almost every day. Hey, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
And you had your D levels checked, blood D levels checked, and she had dangerously low vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
And that was a real shock. Like, I wasn't surprised.
That's when we woke up to vitamin D.
Yeah, that's when we woke up in about 2012. And you know, sort of, and we've been like, that's like something we consider really, really important, as well as B12, you know, being vegan, because there's no B12 in the water and on veggies and stuff like that. It's all been, you know, kind of processed and all of that. So, you know, B12 and vitamin D, that's really important. We always, you know, and omega-3s are always a good thing to take through too, you know, for the DHA to increase that. But anyway, so you can get algae DH, algae-based vitamin, algae DH omega-3s. But anyway, so I don't think that, you know, one can rely on the sun anymore just for that, Didi. Do you think so?
No, and I mean, that's the issue. That's one of the reasons black people or people with darker skin.
What are we watching now, Didi? What's going on here?
Oh, I'm just put on this. If we're going to yap, we may as well have some entertaining video.
Yeah.
and the yapping is great, but yeah, that's the thing with people with darker colored skin, highly
Yeah.
pigmented skin,
Yeah.
don't get as much vitamin D.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also older people,
Yeah.
your
Older people.
ability of your skin to produce vitamin D declines.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
So and then as Furious, we have it. So I read that out
yeah,
before.
there's good
And
toasters.
Dawn
There
says,
certainly are.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Dawn says, I hate all the plastic being disposed of with no end in sight. Yeah. And Kim said, my bedside clock is older than I am and still works. Only the actual clock on it still works, but that's all I need.
Yeah.
Good one. And Herb says that they've invented an AI capable robot for cleaning plastic off of beaches. I think that was a YouTube video. That's good. Yep, there's good toasters on eBay. I honestly haven't seen that toaster with the flip sides and stuff. Of course, you have to keep an eye on it, otherwise you burn the bejesus out of them if you're not careful. They had no timer on them, but that's fine.
Oh, those ones, yeah.
The original ones, heavy, made of steel, not plastic.
Well, our one's made of metal, but
Yeah.
yeah.
A correction about collapsing car bodies. Car bodies are made collapsible to save lives in car crashes as mandated by law. Oh, I see.
I wasn't talking about those aspects of it. I was talking about the fact that a lot of them are very flimsy.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, you can, punch the side of a door these days, and you will create a dent.
Yeah.
And in the old days, there's no way.
Yeah. The problem too,
steel.
though, with those large, very high cars, if they hit you side on, you basically get a head injury. That's what I find is very disturbing. It used to be like, I mean, you could get definite injury if it hits, if they were lower cars. But now they're so high, literally you can get a head injury from a side-on crash, and that's kind of crazy.
Also, those high cars are very often have high centers of gravity, and they're less stable. They're actually less safe than
the high center of gravity. Yeah. And then Dawn says, I use a stovetop camp toaster. It's only good for bread.
Oh, those are great. That's those ones we were talking about that have the little grill things.
Oh, yes.
They're great.
We've actually been using a tiny little $100. We were using this $100 portable oven for like years and years. We're still using it because we're still finishing off the kitchen, and we haven't we've got a stovetop, but we haven't got like an oven.
But we're making sourdough bread in it and all kinds of things.
Yes, and we've made all sorts of things in it now. It's amazing, and it's been going on and on and on, like, hasn't it, Dee Dee?
Yeah.
So let's see.
You can't buy them anymore.
No, you can't buy them anymore.
Yeah.
There was even a toaster from the 60s that automatically pulled the toast down into it to toast and then eject. That's amazing. I don't remember that.
No.
No. Oh, hang on. Oh, excuse me. Oh.
I think you need to go down to the
tired.
bottom.
So
we've looked at that.
Yeah, Helen. The fallacy of composition. If everyone had a high vehicle, then everyone would be able to see over the cars in front of them.
Yeah.
Everyone should have their D levels checked. Absolutely. Why were her D levels low despite sun exposure? Too much clothing cover? I don't know.
I don't think so. Because
I'll post this link to this thing for the nutrition facts because it's all based on science. And
certainly
Certainly
I was getting some clothing cover.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been indoctrinated with the slip, slop, slap, anti-skin cancer stuff. Australia has a very high level of skin cancer.
Yeah.
But no, I was doing a lot of gardening and stuff like that. I think it might be partly my age.
Yeah.
And partly in Tasmania, there's lower light levels.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not just countries that are in low light levels though. It just seems to be a worldwide phenomenon.
There was a fair bit of sun,
and that's kind of weird. But maybe, I don't know. What was I going to say? Oh, sorry. We'll just read a few more of these, and then.
Yeah.
So yes, the little grill plates. Oh, anyway, that's it for the comments. So.
Okay.
Anyway, but I don't think we have much more to say about.
No, we don't have any more science articles like that.
Anyway, it's so. I think that's probably it, Dee Dee. Hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks so much for dropping by and everything. We went through about 6 or 7 different articles, and some of the beginning ones were very heavy, but we thought we should address the IPCC one because they're always very conservative, and even though they're conservative, it's still kind of a bit scary anyway, isn't it, Dee Dee?
It is.
And
I mean, at this point, they're saying kind of, we're stuffed.
Yeah.
Without quite coming out and saying that. They're saying we're stuffed, but if we really work at it, all get together right now and get right into it, it won't be that bad.
It won't be that bad. No.
I mean, that's kind of where they're at this point. They basically said, you know how 3 years ago they were saying we must stay below 1.5. They say, no, that's gone now. And they're saying, you know, we're liable to have 2.5.
Yeah.
And that would be an utter disaster.
Yeah.
And we're going to go over 1.5, but if we're really good and everybody gets together and everybody does the right thing right now, you know, and from now on and works together as a globe, you know, we might be able to get above 1.5 and then pull it back down to 1.4.
Yeah.
But 1.4, I mean, if 1.5 was a disaster, you know, 1.4 isn't much below that.
No, exactly. Yeah.
You know, it looks
and
like
they're not taking in. They can't, Dee Dee. They can't predict. Also, Dee Dee.
Yeah.
They can't predict also the feedback loops, how they're going to go.
No.
Anyway, we don't want to end on an unhappy note.
No.
So, but what was I going to say? Anyway, we'll wrap it up here. So thanks so much for. Does anybody want to talk about anything else before we sign off? Because you know we can go for another 15 minutes or so.
Handles come off in my hand.
The what?
Oh, the handles come off in my hand if I pull too hard on my car door.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for dropping by, Dawn. Yeah. Anyway, so we might wrap, Didi. We might wrap up here, and so thanks so much for dropping by. And we'll probably be doing, Didi. We'll probably be doing this every a couple of weeks or every. Hopefully, it'll be more often than once a month. So we're just calling it Science Snapshots, and this is episode 1. So. Because Didi, has she has a lot of knowledge on different subjects, and it's always good to just have a look at the science that's out, in the current science. And sometimes there's some, like that thing about COVID and being able to eradicate it with that particular, that's sort of optimistic stuff, and we need a little bit of.
It's amazing that there is this Star Trek level science that's happening.
Yeah.
And it's so sad that proprietary information, patents and all the intellectual property and the profit motive gets so much in the way of that. I think right now if we really had free scientific information, if universities hadn't bought into the whole profit intellectual, and they do that because otherwise corporations just steal it.
Yeah. Like they did with the electric car. They bought the patent and then nobody could produce it. Yeah, Didi?
Yeah.
That happened in the 60s, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
That's criminal.
Yeah.
It's criminal.
Yeah.
If people had been driving, in some ways it would have been better if we hadn't been driving these effing fossil fuel monstrosities, which are contributing to war. Yeah. And then you've got, the military-industrial complex. The U.S. Army uses a huge amount of oil. Yeah. They're actually, using a huge amount of oil and going around the world invading countries for oil.
Yeah.
And then it'll be water, and then it's lithium, all those different things. Anyhow, we don't want to get onto that. But anyhow, so
Yeah,
thanks.
we were going to have a happy.
Yeah. We better
Happy
have a
thoughts
happy
on the
ending.
way out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks
Yeah.
a lot.
Anyway,
I'll let you end the thing. We keep saying goodbye, but we keep
I
talking.
just wanted to finish up that little thought about the Star Trek science.
Oh yes,
You know,
yes.
it's just so lovely seeing and thinking about the fact that we could do these things, and it's
Yeah.
too bad that we're unlikely to get the chance. But God, we could.
Yeah,
If
we could.
we had the time, if we managed not to destroy ourselves first,
Yeah.
and we actually work cooperatively, without having to worry about somebody making a shitload of money off of it.
Yeah.
We could do all kinds of fabulous stuff.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
Okay, well
Anyway,
anyway, we'll say goodbye now. So thanks
we
for
will say
watching,
goodbye
and
now.
and see you soon, and much love to you. Stay
Yeah.
safe. Be in the present, because there's so much beautiful stuff in the present, and that's all we have really. Okay.
Kim said, Dee Dee not only wears many hats, she owns a hat store. I don't know. That's not true. Thank you, Kim, though. That's a very nice thing to say. Okay. I'm going to stop now.
Okay, bye.
1, 2, 3.